5:33, and Karen, I know you have an adjustment to the agenda.
I have a couple adjustments to the agenda. Under Select Board items, I would like to move the Auditor overview to the A position. And then Green Mountain Lantern would be second, and so on. And I also want to move town warning articles below Liz Adams for the school district. Because we do have a couple guests, and I don't really want them to sit through the entire meeting. And two other adjustments: general fund preliminary budget discussion and highway department preliminary budget discussion. I'm requesting to table those two items until next week.
Yeah.
For a special meeting.
Let me run to my printer quickly. I'll be right back.
Okay. I don't know.
Is Bear not coming?
She's here.
Oh. Hi, Bear.
Hi, Eva.
And camouflage again, Vera?
I guess so.
Okay, sorry, I didn't print the page I needed, but so let's go ahead. So so first thing would be warrants.
How about approval of minutes?
Oh, sorry.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 30th, 2020 and January 6th, 2021.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of December 30th and January 6th. If there is no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, good.
Then
next comes the warrants.
I'll make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer on completion of review.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants as presented upon completion of review. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, so Karen, you want to hit those guys?
Sure. So payroll warrant dated January 15th, 2021 in the amount of $18,817.04.
But you see everybody on it. Oh. Except they can't see it because she got the camera.
I don't have any questions.
I don't.
Okay, I don't either. So AP.
Accounts payable dated January 1st, 2021 through January 15, 2021 in the amount of $45,665.24.
I don't have any questions.
Would we pay Twin State $6,800 for?
For truck number 3 for repairs.
You know what? There's.
For repairs.
Okay, I got it. I'll talk to Brian.
So most of that was labor. I'll just let you know, because I did look at the invoice. And that is repairs on truck number 3, which is the one that is scheduled to be replaced next fiscal year in 23.
And what I'm assuming Kids Reference Company is library?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, there was multiple purchases of volumes of books in different categories.
Okay.
Yep. That's all I got.
Okay. So moving on next to public comment on items not on the agenda. And if you are with us and would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda, if you could either put something in the chat, or I can't see all attendance at once because of the nature of my screen. So if anybody has anything they want to say, please say it now or forever. All right, sounds like we don't have public items for public comment on the, not on the agenda. So our next would be to move to select board items. And so we're going to do auditor overview to start with.
So I would just like to start off by saying we have Ron Smith here and Samantha Ruggles. This is a new auditor for us this year. We have spoken and worked with Samantha on a number of occasions, and we've also worked with Maureen from their office as well. Alyssa and I did. I want to thank Alyssa Harlow too. She actually went page by page through the audit, and she had some questions. We worked them out with Maureen today.
Karen, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you mute everybody except for you? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback and car noises.
I'm going to mute David because he's usually the culprit. Sorry, David. Sorry. So, and I spoke to Ron this morning. So they are both here, Ron and Samantha, and I'm going to introduce Ron Smith. If you want to give us an overview of our financials, we would appreciate that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Glad we had the opportunity to do business with you guys this year. And Sam's the brains of the outfit. So Sam, why don't you just take it from here? I'm just kidding. So it's literally Sam spent. I worked in the backgrounds with Sam and Maureen, and I know a lot about Putney. Just to tell you a little bit about us, you know, we've got about 32 professionals that work at our company. You know, Sam and I are born and raised in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. You know, we're native Vermonters, always will be. And we do about 400 governments in the states of Maine and Vermont. So we know who you are, what you do, and the world that you belong to and what's going on in it. So we're kind of prepared to talk Putney and, you know, and any questions that you guys may have, you know, regarding your state, you know, any sounding boards that you need and you know, and what's going on in the world out there, you know, right now as it relates to government and finance, et cetera. And Karen Ford made a list of questions, and we did have a chance to talk this morning just about some common ground issues, kind of like the highlights of the financial state of Putney. And how about I just take a few minutes, you all, and just go over that and, you know, and just talk about where we're at with that. Would that be of help?
That sounds great.
So just breaking it down really into Putney, you know, into two pieces. You know, basically we focus mainly on all your governmental funds, which consist of town government, highway, and water and sewer. You know, you're a busy town down there. You've got a lot going on, and I'd probably start with the town operations, you know, that you've got right now, and financially, you know, at the end of the year, you know, based on, just bear with me here, and I've got the exact numbers. Karen, do they actually all have a copy of the draft copy of the audit in front of them? Have they seen it?
Yes, I just sent them the revised that Maureen pulled together this afternoon.
So if you guys are on page 17, you know, really at the end of the day, what you owned and what you owed, you know, really is where the conversation starts. So at the end of the year, you owned about I'm in the first column in the general fund, if you're on page 17 of the financials, And I might not have the most updated copy, but this is going to be pretty close to what you guys are looking at. You owned about 1.5, you owed about $1,250,000. You guys had about $210,000 of equity, of which really your unassigned fund balance, the money that's really not attached to anything, is about $100,000. And where we like to.
Hang on, Ron, sorry. Karen, that revision draft 1 financial statements, I have the email, but I don't have an attachment. So I don't know where that got to. Did others have that problem or not?
Do you have the original one that you were sent, Josh? Because it's not that much different.
I have
Right.
the one that was sent to us back at the end of December. Is that?
Yeah, it's not that much different. You could get by by
That's not
looking at
that
that
different.
one.
There's just some change. Josh, we did that on purpose. We put one of those Trojan, stealth emails in there to make it disappear when she sent it off. So that was one of our old auditing tricks. Sorry.
There you go.
And I can go back and talk to you. There's really not much changes. And at the end of the day, really what you guys carried over from June 30, 2020 into June 30, 2021 fiscal year, and the year that you're in right now that you're trying to, talk about budgeting and passing a budget here, for your March town meeting, is about $100,000. And based on a budget of about $1.3 million, ish, for Putney terms, we like to see you guys at anywhere from 30, 60, 90 days of that number, sitting in reserve to use it for things like tax relief, for matching funds, for when the phone call rings and there's a number attached to it for something that you weren't prepared for or part of your budget. It's basically financial mitigation money that you've got to use to carry forward, that you really don't have a plan for. And that'll be part of the conversation a little bit later on as we've talked to Karen this morning. But $100,000 would be representative of probably a little less than 30 days of your operating budget. And where, again, we like to see you is the benchmarks for who you are is 30, 60, 90 days, or 8, 16, and 24% of your operating budget. So to put it in terms for you, somewhere around 105, 110, 210, 220, 330, 340 is where we want to see you. So you're really at the lower end of where our standards would like you to be for a town your size. And I would probably argue that you're even, probably lower, because of the utility funds, water and wastewater, that you guys operate. And water and wastewater, if you had that draft in front of you, they can be found on pages 21 and 22. And you guys are actually very well financially positioned for water and wastewater. You're carrying forward about $350,000. I'm on page 21, first column for water, and it's about the third number up from the bottom. And you're carrying forward about $155,000 for wastewater, your sewer. And I think that really, is exceptional. And I would probably argue that your water and wastewater, your proprietary funds, are financially more stable than the actual town government fund itself. And the other conversation piece in here, because you really can't look at town government without looking at highway, and I'm just going to jump back and forth here, between your four conversation pieces. On page 17, I'm back on that page. You guys are actually carrying forward about $275,000 in your highway fund. And that's really where the conversation starts, you all, is that because the three funds that I just talked about last, water, wastewater, and highway, they are in financially better sound condition than the town's general operations and general government is. And I don't know if there's like a plan and design to really kind of, like run lean, with general town government. But I really think in talking to Karen, it starts off with a plan and some kind of fund balance policy where you've got some plan where there's more of math and there's more of science, with what you're carrying forward for town government, for highway, for water and wastewater. The statutory sets highway, once highway, always highway, until you kind of like, go back through a town meeting process and deobligate that money. But the other thing that we saw about highway with that $275,000 is really that's like one stop shop. That's all the money they got for highway. So one of the things that we talked about this morning is having some kind of a maintenance or capital reserve fund for highway, maybe seeding it with this money here that exists there right now. And I would argue you're going to need the same thing for your general fund and general government as well. And that really, I think brings forth to the conversation a much needed plan and a much needed fund balance policy in Putney, really to kind of like establish some math for how much money that you guys are willing to carry forward and really where that money is going to reside so that down the road you have a plan for that money. And that's one of the things that I would probably say would be right and first and foremost, at the top of the conversation would be really that kind of financial plan that kind of outlines, your business, from just general town government to water to wastewater to roads to the trustees of the trust, all those things that you do, and really, the ones that aren't statutorily set, coming up with some kind of plan, which I think you're going to need more of, because I think right now, based upon the $100,000 that you're carrying on June 30th for general town government, it's just not enough money, you guys, to really, sit and feel comfortable, running a town government of your size with all the different things that you do down there. And I know I just said a mouthful, but I gotta like to end it there, and just like entertain any questions up until now, just kind of like with the overall financial condition, of the town. If somebody were to say, Ron, let's go back to school and put a letter grade, A through F, with the town's financial condition, I'd probably have to give you a couple of letter grades. I'd give you probably a solid A minus for highway, water, and wastewater. I'd probably give you somewhere probably a C minus to a D plus, with general town government, based upon what I know out there, based upon auditing 225 municipalities, and really kind of pulling Putney out there, because everybody's different and saying, hey, where are we at financially? I'd probably put you at a little below average, all because of your general fund and really the fact that you're operating lean down there. And this is a tough time in our financial economy to be running government lean. So
where, you may have said this and I just didn't catch it, but in the general fund non-spendable category, what is that? And can we move it into unassigned?
The non-spendable is probably like prepaid insurances and inventory and things like that. It's commitments that you've made post July 1, where we know that you're going to spend that $100,000 plus post July 1, because part of our auditing step was to go in, and look, okay, this is how much money you got. How much money will you have in the next 90 days? What will you be spending out of that? So we've kind of like taken that away from you, knowing that that the town wrote out checks for those certain items that we can get you everything and the amounts associated with them. So we're basically saying, okay, take that right off the top. The town is going to spend that, post June 30th.
Okay. And then remind me, I think I heard you say that as far as unassigned or unrestricted, for general fund, you'd like to see that more in the 250 to 3 range. Is that right?
I'd like to see it more in the 250 range, correct? Somewhere around 60 days, right in the middle. And we'd like to see it there just because of, the fact that you're running water, you're running wastewater, you're pooling your money together. Financially, government has ebbs and flows and cash flow, and all your money's consolidated, and I would argue at any given point in time, that the town can depend on the consolidation of the highway funds and the taxes collected, depend on the water revenues, depend on the wastewater revenues as the money's commingled, at any point in time, and vice versa. But if you were up to 60 days, I think that the general fund, I'd feel a lot better, as an outsider looking in, that would be a much better comfort zone for you all to run town government based on all the things that you're doing down there.
And I believe I'm correct in my understanding that none of those other, I mean, if, for example, we were to have a major glitch in the next 60 days, there's no way, even with voter approval, there's no way to move money from highway, for example, into general. Is that correct?
Highway is going to be the tougher one for you all to do, but water and wastewater, I would argue that you could create what we call inter-fund loans, between the government and water and wastewater, and have the ability to access some of their cash flow. So there would be ways in the case of an emergency, to move some of those monies around that you guys have been given the statutory right to do. But that's a tough thing to do, and that's a tough position to put yourself in if you have to get to there. And as I told Karen this morning, I think that there's some work to do, and I think that there's a plan that could be had for Putney that makes sense for you. Don't compare yourself to your neighbor. Don't compare yourself to some other municipality. Compare yourself to the town of Putney. Look in the mirror and really come up with a plan that makes sense. And like I say, if you've got to start resorting to borrowing money from other funds, you got bigger problems down there. And I think to head that off, really look in the mirror and come up with that kind of fund balance plan policy, really going forward. And I really think that that's some attention. And the best advice that I can give you going forward is that somewhere where you're going to need some attention paid to.
So I have a question, Ron.
Karen, can you unmute David?
He's unmuted
Okay,
now.
go ahead, Karen. I did.
No,
Go ahead.
go ahead, because I know you've been waiting.
No,
David, go
please,
ahead.
please. No, it's all right. Go ask
Right.
your question, please.
So Ron, we have a reserve fund. It's called Phase 2 and Phase 3 sidewalk, right?
Yep.
So it's 707, and it was for building a sidewalk up to Landmark College, and that project's been completed. And we have sitting in that reserve fund, $145,400.
I'm trying to find it right now, Karen. I'm going right there right now. Keep going though. Keep going.
Yep. So we have, approximately 145,000 in there. If we take this particular reserve fund and transfer it to the general fund?
So it's a great question. So you have plenty of options, and the answer would be, Karen, yes, that would be one of the options. It's the intent of the. Here's what I'll assume. Somewhere along the line, and again, this is our first year in Putney, but somewhere along the line in the past few years, you went for voter approval to do this sidewalk project, correct?
Correct.
Well,
And they blessed, probably an amount up to, and basically maybe some debt borrowing to do that, as I recall.
Yes.
Here's what we want to do. We want you guys to do it, spend up to X, and spend up to X for this project. So the voters allowed you, and the statute allows the selectmen to be the custodians of those funds. So at the end of the day, on June 30, 2020, you got about $146,000 in that fund. If that fund is over, the responsibility for the fund and the intent of that fund is done, I would say the selectmen have a couple of options. One would be and even a combination and a buffet of options. One would be, Karen, to move that back into the general fund, based upon the completion of the project. You won't need voter approval to do that. The municipal officers can do that. Or, Karen, go back and rewrite an article. And I just don't know how that article was written, when you asked to do, the sidewalks, and say, you know what? We're light in highway, or we're light in, another capital project and endeavor, that we've got coming down the road. We'd like to take half and move it back to the general fund, and half to move it, to complement, a future capital plan that we have, and some much needed repairs on our infrastructure in the town. You'd have plenty of options, Karen, to do that for sure.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on, Mr. Fairman. I know David has a question, so I'm going to let him go first, and then we'll come to you.
First thing, Ron, I just want to say thank you. I have no experience in finance like this, but I felt for a long time that we were out of balance, and it's really good to hear you say this, and we're going to come up with a plan. We've all been thinking about this a lot for the last year or two, and it's really nice to have some direction. I want to thank you for that. Second thing is a question. Besides having this general fund reserve, is there any other area? What's the next important thing that we could do to make our situation more fiscally sound? Is there anything
I'd probably have some kind of debt service policy if I were you guys. I mean, you know, you're allowed 10% of your grand list, and you still have room for debt, but I'm not sure you got a plan. You know, and really debt ought to be, you ought to factor that into your plan too, you know, and whether, and I think that you're going to need a few plans. I think you're going to need one for water, wastewater. I think you're going to need one for general government. I think you're going to need one for highway, because those are four unique business areas that all I think need a different plan. So I think that that would be the second thing that I would address, is really some kind of a debt service plan, you guys, to, you know, to kind of put forth and put motion. You know, it sounds like you're going to be spending some money on some infrastructure going forward. You know, right now, one of your only options is to borrow, you know, really. So that's a tough option to really kind of be confined to. The good news is I think it's a great way, you know, to finance infrastructure projects. It's to borrow. I'm a big fan, and especially with market rates for governments where they're at right now, I think it's a great idea. But absent of a plan, I think it really makes it challenging. And that's what I would really work on if I'm Putney, some kind of a debt service plan, you know, really to kind of put to paper, you know, what you got now, you know, what it looks like, maybe refinancing some of these bonds that you've got and notes that you've got right now that you took out a lot for highway, wastewater, water, you know, refinancing some of these things that you've got the ability to do, and really, really put that to paper in a plan. I think that that'd be the second thing that I would focus if I were you guys.
So you said we have room for debt. What does that mean? It seems to me like if we don't have much for cash reserves, how could we have room for debt? That swings.
Because you can always borrow money. You know, a government has many more privileges, you know, in borrowing money. And when you put the good faith and credit for your government like Putney, you know, Vermont has a statute where it says, hey, we'll allow you to borrow up to 10 times the amount of your grand list. You're nowhere near that. So the question is okay, we're going to have over the next year and a half, I'm just thinking out loud, we're going to have some kind of a sidewalk project part 2, you know, that's going to cost us $350,000-$400,000. You're going to have no choice but to borrow that some of that $350,000-$400,000, because the town doesn't have the money. There's not enough money sitting in reserve. You've actually got another general reserve account for capital at like $80,000. So like I say, another opportunity that you're going to have to make that project work is borrowing. I'm a big fan of it, but where did that fit in your plan? You know, so that's really, I think, the things that need to be looked at, you know, as you go forward for your town, you know, but I'm a big fan of borrowing. You got plenty of room to borrow. Where, what, when, how much? I really think that you guys got to really put that really to paper there and really kind of have a plan. And I'd actually refinance some of this debt you got too. So,
Josh, this is Ann. I would really like to get on the list to ask one question at some point.
Okay, so.
I gotta
Dave,
go. Talk to you.
So this is clearly just a 1-year thing for you, Ron, from how you're talking. Is that right?
Yeah, actually about 1 minute. Nah, just kidding. When you say 1 year, what are you talking about? Your plan?
David, no, I was kidding.
Gotcha. So I'm back to 1 minute then. I got my watch out.
So David, you got anything else?
I just a general question, and we can ask Ron in the future if he's going to work with us. It's just an idea of, because I don't understand how to do this yet. There must be some kind of balance between. I know you just said you can borrow 10 times your grand list. I get that. I know it's different than a business, but you know, debt in relation to, you know, what your budget in relationship to how much reserve you have. There must be some kind of formula you could fill in.
There's a lot of formula. There's a lot. It's a great question. There's a lot of formulas. The formulas all start with a plan. We could go to debt to equity. We could go to debt to taxes. We could go to debt to service fees for water and wastewater. There's a lot of options you guys have. But I really think, like I say, we really don't talk about options until we talk about a plan. And then I really think that, you know, that when you get into this is what we have. This is where we're trying to go. This is what we can do to get there. Then I think that you can really say, okay, now it would make sense to have, you know, for the water and wastewater, some kind of debt to equity, you know, plan there, you know, for them, you know, and I think everyone's going to have to be different and unique depending on what part of your government we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So
So-
I'm just going to check with Barra whether she has any question, and then we'll go to Mr. Fairman and then to Ann.
Yeah, my general question is so that we don't have to go through all of the details in this select board meeting is, Ron, do you have a specific person that you would recommend we could work with to figure out that plan? Maybe it's you,
Yeah.
maybe it's another.
We
but
got plenty of people in the office that we would have pair Sam up with to do that. So the answer is yes. So.
Great.
Excellent.
So my last question before I move to others is, how long a time frame? I mean, I guess one, how long a time frame to come up with a plan, and two, what do you see as a realistic horizon for being in the position that you imagine we would want to be in? I mean, are we talking 1 to 2 years, or are we talking 3 to 5, or 5 to 7?
Yeah, I think 3 to 5 is more realistic. I mean, you think about it, you're talking about 2022's budget, I believe tonight, and probably for some other time going forward. So, I mean, really to kind of get our arms around this thing and do something, I think that you can start the resemblance of 22, just to kind of understand 22, the direction that you're at, and where, quite frankly, 21's going to end before 22 starts, and really get a guide. So there's some things that you could do now, but really kind of, putting, some really good math to, to a plan. I really think you're talking 3 to 5 years to, to really to accomplish that.
I believe the vast majority of our debt is through the bond bank, and therefore, since we refinanced not that long ago, it's not an option to refinance that.
Yeah, so you got a lot of other debt that's non-bond bank too.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fairman, you had a question or a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am quoting the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Model Reserve Fund Policy with Guidance dated July 2019, page 1. I quote, "The bottom line is that a reserve fund does not exist unless the voters have approved it at an annual or special town meeting," unquote. In other words, Mr. Chairman, none of you can create a reserve fund. You have to ask the voters to do it.
Well, we already have, I believe, some reserve fund money for not in highway, I don't think, but in sewer and water we do. Karen, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I'll continue to read it then. Same paragraph. Accordingly, if you are not sure if you have a bona fide reserve fund, check the town or special meeting minutes to see if a record of the voters creating the fund exists. If no such record exists, neither does the fund, unquote.
Okay, thank you. I know that the one that I remember in most recent memory is the sidewalk repair reserve fund, which was definitely voter approved. That was.
And can I just respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Listen, it's exactly what I said at the beginning. The voters, which is why I asked about the sidewalks. At some point in time, the voters put the money there, and you as municipal officers are the custodians of that money. When the intent of that project, is done, you'll have options. One of the options is to move that money back into the general fund. I would say de facto fault, based upon that statute that the gentleman just read. The other option is to go back to your voters and say, hey, we don't really want to move it all. As we asked you for money to put in the sidewalks, we'd like to take $75,000 and put it into sidewalk number 2 fund, down the road, because we're going to need it. That's how that will work. And that's what I suggest as you put this plan to paper, that's exactly what I would do in Putney.
Okay.
It's a little bit different. You've got some more statutory rights when it comes to the highway, fund, and you as the custodians and the highway person, there's some statutes that specifically apply to borrowing and debt and reserve funds for that, which give you, a little bit more rights than the protocol right now that the gentleman just cited, but because there's one specific for highways. But I would concur with the gentleman that just cited that article, and I would go back to say, put your plan to paper. There's $146,000 if that project's done. before you just arbitrarily put it back in the general fund, maybe there's another need that we can go back and ask the voters for, to say, we're done with this project. We could really use this money because we got a plan together for whatever that plan looks like.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make a correction here.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm continuing reading from this document, and with due respect to the gentleman who just spoke, 24 VSA Section 2804 allows municipalities to establish a reserve fund under the control and direction of the Select Board. Money in the reserve fund can be expended by the Select Board for such purposes for which the reserve fund was established, or for other purposes when authorized by a majority of the voters at an annual or special town meeting. Creation of a reserve fund requires voter approval, period. In other words, the gentleman is incorrect that you have discretion over the reserve fund beyond whatever article at town meeting granted you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I can completely concur what he just said. If I did a bad job saying that, that's exactly what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's what I heard. I was trying to point out that we do have a couple reserve funds that are separate. I mean, there is actually a sidewalk repair reserve fund.
But the intent of that sidewalk reserve fund is done and has been met if you go back to the article and satisfied that article. Now, if you've got another plan, we can go back to the voters and say, hey, this is what we want to do with that money because that project's over.
Right, but there's two different sidewalk funds. I'm just trying to be clear here so people know what we're talking about. There's the sidewalk fund that was approved by voters for the construction of sidewalk, and that's the money you're talking about.
Correct.
If we wanted to reallocate that, we would go back to the voters. There is also a sidewalk repair fund.
Correct, and that's got about 86 grand. I believe there's some other funds in there with that too.
And then, so that would be if we were using that for, as per the statute that was cited, if we were using that for sidewalk repair, that's at the discretion of the Select Board. The other one would not be at the discretion of the Select Board to choose to use for something different. So
yeah, and I just don't know enough about that other fund that you've got, that other sidewalk fund is in, because I'd have to go back and read the articles that establish that fund. But what we're clear, but just to be clear, what that gentleman cited pertains to general government. There are other statutes beside 24 that apply to highway and roads and equipment reserve funds and boring, etc. You got other statutes that would apply to that.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ann, you had a question.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Ron, the Conservation Commission is interested in perhaps transferring a piece of land that the town owns to a nonprofit group that has managed it without cost to us for 20 years. We think it's a really good idea to make this transfer, but it will reduce our assets. The land is valued currently, I think, at around $50,000. On the other hand, it will increase tax income to the town for the portion of the town forest that lies within Putney. That's about $1,000. We, as a town, currently owe Brookline over $2,000 in taxes, which would go away, and then we'd have to renegotiate a deal about our road crew taking care of some of the Brookline roads, which was sort of a trade-off. Would that be helpful in terms of more income to the town, even though it's a smidgen?
I would say, Ann, I would definitely want to know more about it before I would even offer any type of advice to the town, for sure. Like I said, there's a lot of movement now with conservations. There's a lot of movement now with municipalities basically sitting tight on their property for many reasons. So Ann, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you, about this and further, just so I could understand more details, so I could, best give the town, advice, on what I would do if I was in its position.
Okay, and you would have to know a lot more about why this town is valuable to the town residents over time. And
yeah, I'd be interested in what role the town's doing right now. I'd be interested in, what land it is, what the town's doing with the land right now, what the conservation role is. I would just have a lot of questions, Ann, before I would offer any type of value to this conversation, really.
Okay, and how would I get in touch with you to convey that information?
Call Sam. I'm not giving you my number.
Okay.
Listen,
Dan
Ann,
doesn't wanna do it either.
just get a hold of Karen, and I would look forward to any conversations you all would want, Ann, regarding this piece of property and and a plan, for lack of a better way. So
A plan?
yeah, a plan, which I really don't know anything about except for what you just said. So
Okay.
Excuse me. May I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay, Ron, you've given us so much information. You're a sharp ticket. Several times you talked about the select men, and in our town, we have select board. We have women. So
yeah,
I just want to
listen, I
help you a little
apologize.
bit. Ron, I'm talking.
Sorry.
I want to help you a little bit when you're talking to people in other towns. There are women that are part of these boards. So we call them the select board. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening.
And if my 4 sisters, I'm sure if they were here, would have corrected me too. I apologize, and I meant no offense by it.
So I think what we need to do in order to have our meeting tonight not go on forever is talk a little bit about any concerns you do or don't have about how, less about this plan, which I'm fully in favor of exploring, and more about the actual results of our audit as far as our financials are concerned.
Yeah. So just to get into that a little bit, there was a couple of best practice comments on bank reconciliations, and I think that there was a, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, like a fire department, matter where there was like some billings going on that, quite frankly, I think kind of could have been a better practice without how that was handled, and more of the details behind that, Sam. Going forward, that was pretty much the 2 big conversation pieces that we had, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean, those are all things that we talked about. Those are all things that we certainly aren't prepared, because I think your staff understands its craft and is doing a great job. So there's no need for us to say fire. All we said is, hey, if we were you, here's 2 areas that came up during our audit that we probably think that there could be some best practices, and we had some discussion about that, and quite frankly, I think that those can be mitigated and have been, already. But yeah, I think that would go, in addition, as far as like audit results, in there, and I would probably say that that's about that, in addition to what we just talked about for the past however long we've talked, regarding the plan on the other funds.
Josh, I had one more question.
Go ahead, Ann.
I just wondered, why are towns holding on to land at this point in time? In general.
Which town? I mean, all for different reasons. So I really wouldn't even offer it. If I was talking South Burlington, I could tell you many reasons why South Burlington's holding on to land for airport expansion or their downtown center project that they got. I could tell you Killington's holding on to land for tourist development, things like that. So I would say, Ann, it would just depend, on where you are, where you're at. And I'm not ashamed to tell you my roots. And, I'm from St. Johnsbury. I don't know a lot about Putney, but if you're willing to educate me, I'm willing to listen. So.
Okay, I appreciate that very much. And thanks for all your information.
Sure.
So, but you don't, I mean, the basic message is that you do not have significant material concerns about how our audit, the results of our audit.
No, I just think that there just needs to be some details, maybe some medicine. As I told Karen, there's some, that I would equate to it, that you guys have some sicknesses that I think that there's medicine for there. And with a plan, I really think a lot of your problems go away. You guys really do a good job moving, paper from point A to point B. And that was evident. The 2 concerns that we talked are fixable, if not fixed already. So no, there are no concerns where I would say, hey, there's major problems in Putney. Trust me, these conversations don't roll that way all the time, but not in Putney. No, I think this is a great job, and I think that a lot of it really stems around, this culture, these years of budgets, and and maybe, and I'm not saying this with any disrespect, maybe the absence of that plan and focus on certain areas, conservation being one of them, finances being another. Really, I think that that's where I would focus my efforts, you all, and that's where I think that's what I think that I would do. And listen, a lot of municipalities are in this position too. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
the gentleman who just spoke, I understood to have said earlier that there are a number of Vermont statutes referring to reserve funds having to do, for example, I believe he mentioned highway, water and sewer, etc. While I've been listening, I've been doing some research, and I simply returned to the document which I cited earlier, which begins, this is the first sentence: a reserve fund is a separate dedicated financial account that is created to fund a specific municipal purpose whose balance is carried over from year to year. Reserve funds are created by approval from a majority of voters at the annual or special town meeting, 24 VSA section 2804. I've gone through Vermont statutes. There is no other statute that says that this does not apply in certain circumstances. You have to have voter approval to establish a reserve fund, period.
and I would just respond if the gentleman wants to put some questions to Karen or you all in writing. I'd be more than happy to respond to what I just said a time ago. So, and I'm not even citing 24. I'm citing another statute for highways. So anyway, but I'd be more than happy if he wants to put some things in writing. I'd be more than happy to discuss this with him if that's what you all want. But may I suggest whatever the areas of concern, or instead of just reading from statute, whatever the questions that have, please just address them to the board or Karen, and I'd be more than happy to answer them to save time to this meeting.
I would just.
I have to add here that we are under the Vermont open meeting law, where I have the right to ask any question I wish about an item on the agenda. And I challenge the gentleman who is speaking to cite the statute he claims either exists alongside or somehow supplants 24 VSA section 2804.
Yeah. May I suggest that he just put that in writing?
Ron, maybe you could just let us know or Karen know, and we can convey those statutes
Absolutely.
to Howard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be more interested in Howard just articulating a question if there's another statute besides 24, open meeting law or not. Just make it a public question, and I'd be more than happy to get you an answer before your next selectmen's meeting.
Well, and I have done so. Cite the statute.
Sir, I'm not prepared to cite the statute now because there's multiple statutes, and I think that it would be, quite frankly, not a good use of a select person's time on the other end of this phone call right now to keep this meeting moving. And I just feel that we're monopolizing a conversation that, quite frankly, if you ask a question, I'm prepared to respond to.
So I'd like to just say that I don't think anybody is questioning the fact that the voters would be required by statute to establish reserve funds. I don't think that. I think that what Mr. Smith has been saying is that there are other statutes related to highway and water and sewer as to how one might expend that money. But I don't think that he's debating whether there is voter approval required for the creation of a reserve fund or for putting money into it. So, but if there are specific questions, I agree. I think we need to move on. And Mr. Fairman, I'm not trying to. I think you're right, and I think that statute is very clear. And I think that it's just a misunderstanding as to what Mr. Smith is implying by referring to other statutes and what they might mean. So.
And Mr. Fairman, I'll extend you the same invitation, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you for sure if that's what the select persons and Karen would like. I'd be more than happy to have that conversation.
Mr. Smith, because I have the deepest respect for the Vermont open meeting law, I conduct municipal business as a private citizen only under the Vermont meeting law in public meetings.
Sure.
I think that's fair. So, I mean, if there's a reason that we need to revisit this in open meeting, I'm sure we can do that. I think we're just talking sort of two parallel conversations that are implying the same thing. So I don't think that's a concern right at the moment, but if that becomes the case, then we will definitely do it in open meeting. So Ron, I'm just wondering, you know, the only significant time pressure we have here is that if we were to want to make any changes for the 21-22 budget or the 22 budget, that we would have to have those articles in place within the next roughly 2 weeks. So I would just ask that if you have, well, I guess that's a conversation maybe we, the select board, when we've had a little time to digest tonight's conversation, maybe next week we talk about that, and we are looking at articles, but we may want to confer with you as to whether there are articles we need to have on our warning for town meeting this year to start.
Josh, may I suggest, Josh, send me a copy of your this year's that's about to end on 21. If I could get a copy of those warrant articles, and Karen, if I could kind of get a status and update from you all financially, kind of where you're at this year, you know, for 21, and if I could get a copy of your proposed articles for 22, I'm more than happy to look at that and just be me and offer you guys any advice for things that I see, you know, within those within the articles that got passed last town meeting and with the articles that are coming up with this March town meeting, if that's something that you'd want me to take a look at.
Okay, because I think that as David, well, as we've all said, you know, we've been talking about this for a year and a half-ish, at least, a lot longer in different formats. But, you know, if we want to take some steps, and we had talked about maybe having some articles this year that would at least move us in that direction. So we'll talk further about that, and then potentially.
Sure. But whatever you need me for a sounding board, even over 2 weeks, you know, I'm here for you. So.
Sounds good. David.
One quick comment. I just want to say thank you, Ron. I'd like to have a conversation with you sometime. That would be great if you're open to that. And sure. I want to say thank you, Karen, and thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for moving paper really well. Thank you.
I want to thank Sam, and I want to let you guys know Sam's going to do all the talking next time.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yes, thank you both very much. Barra, do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Anybody else have any other questions?
If you all do, just find Karen, and she can shoot me an email so that I can, you know, Sam and I can just do some homework. Whatever you all have, you know, for questions, just fire them off to Karen. Whatever we can do to help to answer those, to, you know, to give you the best information or advice possible to make business decisions, just let us know.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
you guys good with us?
Yes.
You're welcome to stay if you want, but you're also welcome.
I'm going to go enjoy Burlington for a little bit here. So everybody be well, be safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye, Sam.
All right. So our next item then would be green. Hang on one sec. Our next item would be Green Lantern. Barra.
I would love to make this really quick, because the only reason we didn't figure it out last week was because I wanted to read the information. I want to let everybody know I read the information. I'm fine with the proposed letter that Pip sent out. The only question I have, and I don't know if Ralph is here, the only question I have, I emailed Pip and didn't hear back from him. The suggested letter has, let me find it in here. The suggested letter cites 5.103 rather than 5.100, and I was confused about that. Is that accurate, or is that a typo?
Bara, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, that was my sound check. 5.103 is just a section within 5.100. It's the definitions section.
Okay, that's the only question I had, and I'm prepared to vote for the select board to say that this is a preferred site and to sign on to that letter.
Was that a motion?
Yes, that was a motion. I make a motion that the select board designate as in all the paperwork, the specific site as a preferred site, and to sign on to the letter that Pip recommended.
Okay. David, sorry, David, you want to second that?
I'll second that. And I just wanted to make one comment before we voted on it really
Okay,
quick.
hang on. Point of clarity, Ralph. Are we just signing on? Do we need to approve it and sign on to that letter, or are we just approving of the letter that the Planning Commission has drafted for this purpose?
Well, it's kind of, you can sort of look at it both different ways. Basically, what the Select Board is doing is signaling its approval of the designation of the site as a preferred site for solar, and really doing the same thing that the Planning Commission did and the Windham Regional Commission.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to be. I wasn't sure whether that fell under our purview to agree to the designation of a preferred site, or whether we would just agree with what the Planning Commission had recommended. Barra, go ahead.
And my understanding from the Planning Commission meeting was that we need to actually have either all of us sign on the letter, or maybe the representative sign onto the letter, because you needed something specific from both the Planning Commission and the Select Board.
Correct.
And do you know, is that just the chair's signature, or can one person be designated, or do we need all those signatures? Do you know, Ralph?
Normally, the chair's signature is adequate, and
Right.
I've seen two different variants where, in one case, on the same letter, you have chair signatures from the Select Board and the Planning Commission, and other cases where the two bodies want to have their own separate letter. It's entirely up to you, but it only requires a chair signature.
Okay. So Karen, the draft, and I don't think I've seen a draft letter from the Planning Commission. I don't recall having seen it. Does it have space for us to sign on to that, and or is it easily modified to accommodate that?
Yes, I have a Word document and I can add your name and your title.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded that the Select Board will approve designating this as a preferred site location, and to sign on with the Planning Commission in their letter of approval. Is there any further discussion?
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not really a discussion. I'm going to sign for it, but I have to say that it is agricultural land, and I really thought about that a lot before I wanted to do this. We don't have too much of that. Everything's growing back up. We have, cut all the trees down. We wouldn't believe how many houses we have here, and so many fields growing up, and that bothered me. But because of the proximity to the substation and how much good I think it's going to do to have solar, then I agree to it. But I guess I agree to it a little reluctantly, because it is agricultural land, and I just want to say that. I just want to, so I can be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would feel very differently, David, if it were actively being used for agricultural land, and or as has been pointed out, and this is certainly a big discussion at the state level, the reality that it's not in perpetuity. It is a limited time frame, and granted, it's a significant time frame, but this is a completely reversible step if and when the need for ag land were to outstrip the need for solar. So I think that's just where my thinking comes to that. And I completely agree with you. And that's why I brought it up last time, is because it is ag land. If it were being actively farmed and that were being pushed aside, I would be more concerned about it. But that's at the landowner's discretion, obviously. So, Karen?
So I want to recognize Susan Heimer and Raymond, is it Husey? They are both abutters on this project, and I'm not sure if they want to make a comment.
Well, I felt like we were a little bit late on the, finding out about it, because the letter arrived announcing that the Select Board would be talking about this the day after your meeting last week. So I brought that up with Karen. We're interested because this is, I'm on Hilo Biddy Road, and we also see a lot of wildlife, deer, foxes, turkeys, bobcat, moose, once in a while, things like that. I don't know whether that will make any difference at all, but anyway, it's not a huge concern because I support solar, and I think that it's only a few acres of woods that we're going to lose. So I just want that point made.
I have a question about that. Did you not receive, because it sounds like what you're saying
Yes,
is,
we got the big mailing from Ralph. Or
okay.
whoever, with the double maps and things. We looked that over. We walked over to see, what the land looked like, and that it's, not going to affect, that much of the view. It's just, close by. That's all.
And did you feel comfortable going to the planning commission meeting if you wanted to? You felt like you could if you wanted to?
Well, I was just saying that this is the first meeting. Karen said, well, just come, because Ralph was going to be at this one. We missed the other one because the notice came to us too late about the town meeting.
That was the first notice you got the day after
Yeah.
our select board meeting.
Exactly. Okay. And that was partly, it was over the New Year, it was, weekend. So, it was U.S. Postal Service getting it to us late, but yeah.
In all fairness, I have to say that Green Lantern's mailing included the date of the meeting.
Oh, okay. I guess I missed. There was a big mailing.
I also overlooked that meeting, waiting for word. But of course, I did get it the day after the meeting. But once I looked at Ralph's letter, it was clear that the date was given
okay.
along with the plans.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
It wasn't the first mailing you got about this. You got a mailing before our meeting from
Ralph. Right. Yes, I got the one that introduced the project, which looked very, very well done. So,
and I think I'm right in saying, you certainly would have had an opportunity, Susan and/or Raymond, to comment to the select board. But I believe, Ralph, that abutters will also have an opportunity to comment in the future. Is that correct?
Yep, they'll get the full application for the certificate of public good as well.
Okay.
So, they are certainly much better equipped, and it doesn't. I don't hear from either of you seemingly a huge objection to this, but the certificate process of the certificate of public good, this is what they do all the time. So they're better equipped to manage that kind of thing than we are, honestly, as far as the influence of abutters and what that means. So I'm sure you will be kept apprised of that, and/or perhaps the information that Ralph already supplied to you has that information on it. But you will have opportunities to comment further if you choose.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Can I say something quickly?
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to meet anybody who wants to actually go down to the field and take a look at things. I'm available whenever anyone would like to take a look.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Ralph met with me today, and we discussed the fact that I believe I'm the only abutter with an uninterrupted view of the plant site. But, we also have a planting between us and the landmark soccer field to the north. So we're in discussion with Green Lantern, and we're not trying to make waves over the project.
Raymond, I believe you're in the brick house that's on the north side of River Road. Is that correct?
Yes, I would describe it as the east side of River Road myself.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, as soon as I said that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just brings it, just so I have an image. Okay, good. So it's been moved and seconded, and we've now had discussion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, by saying aye. Aye. Good. Thank you. All right. So Ralph, I'll make sure my signature is on that letter. You said you needed it pretty soon, so we'll.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Done. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Same offer to you, Ralph. You're welcome to stay if you want, but you're welcome to leave too.
All right.
Okay,
I'll
so
move along.
next on our agenda, sorry, I'm trying to bring it back up here.
Town clerk guidance from the Secretary of State for town meeting.
There you go. I had seen that Jonathan had left, but I'm guessing he might be back on. Is that right?
Karen, he's having a hard time with his mute and unmute.
You talking about me or John?
No,
John.
John, he keeps getting kicked out.
I'm on the phone.
Okay. So it's your floor if you are ready to go.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so there's
So
what to
don't
do
swear.
about town meeting is somewhat in flux right now. There's legislation pending in Montpelier that might change everything that I say right now. So here are our current options of holding a town meeting in the middle of a pandemic. There's no authority for municipalities to conduct town meeting virtually. So a meeting like this could not be a town meeting. The next option is that we could proceed like we're going to go to town meeting, and then have a small contingent there and convene the meeting and then postpone it to a date certain. Vernon did that a few years ago when there was a big snowstorm on town meeting day. The Windham Southeast School District did this with their late March town meeting because of COVID. I'm not sure that that's a great option for us, just because there's a lot of things that we can't really plan. And how do you convene a meeting when you're not sure exactly what's going to happen? The next option is current law, Act 162, allows select boards to vote to have all articles normally decided by a floor vote, decided by Australian ballot. We're already going to have an Australian ballot for a select board seat, for the moderator, for a lister, and a cemetery commissioner. You could add the warned articles for the budget, for the tax exemption for the Putney Gun Club. Those could all be decided on paper. The Windham Southeast School District has already decided to do their annual meeting by Australian ballot, so we're already moving that process forward. And then right now, petition signature requirements. Candidates for local office are not required to collect signatures. They'll be placed on the ballot if they file a consent with my office, and if anybody needs help with that, certainly reach out to me. There's also really good information on the Vermont Secretary of State's website on how to get on the ballot.
And the deadline for that, John? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The deadline for that?
The deadline, I was going to go through all the deadlines momentarily. There's currently no waiver of petition signatures for citizen-initiated articles. The deadlines coming up are, for citizen petition articles, it's tomorrow at 5 p.m., so January 14th at 5 p.m. January 25th at 5 p.m. is the last day for local candidates to file consents. So if you know somebody who's interested in running for local office, that's their deadline. January 31st is the last day to warn and notice a March 2nd town meeting. And then February 10th, early voting will take place. Sometime between February 10th and the 19th, we need to notice and warn any informational meeting. If we're going to do the budget by Australian ballot, for example, that notice would need to go there. So that's the way things currently stand. Passed in the Vermont House and passed out of the Senate Government Operations Committee this afternoon, and likely to be passed into law sometime next week, is a motion or a legislation that would allow towns to move the date of their town meeting. So for example, you might move it to June when we could have it outdoors, or there's enough people vaccinated that an indoor meeting is okay. That law would also automatically extend the terms of municipal officers until the date of the new meeting. So if there was a select board seat, for example, that was scheduled to expire on March 2nd, but you moved the meeting to June 10th, that automatically would continue. There's also some language in there that allows greater voting by mail. What's significant on this legislation is that all of these provisions are permissive, not mandatory. So right now, Karen and I have been proceeding as if town meeting will take place on March 2nd. We're meeting all of those deadlines, but we'll need to decide within the next 2 weeks or so, what's going to be on the notice and warning, what the articles are going to be, and you may have authority to move the meeting. Certainly, you would need to pass a resolution that we're going to decide town meeting issues by Australian ballot. I think probably the 27th of this month would be the last appropriate day to do that, because everything needs to be ready to go that week for town meeting.
So, yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
Jonathan, I know I could look this up, but you probably already have the answer. So those two options, either of changing the date or of moving everything to Australian ballot, those are both things that the select board could decide on its own, or does there need to be some other step?
Right now, you can't move the date.
But I mean, if the I'm sorry,
right,
I wasn't
right.
clear.
So
if the legislation passes?
Yeah, if the legislation passes. And it passed 142 to 2 in the House. The governor has indicated that he's going to sign it as drafted.
And so that would be the select board on its own could make that decision?
The select board on its own motion could decide, for example, to hold, town meeting the first Tuesday in May or the first Tuesday in June. The problem with that is that it pushes those deadlines right into the time when tax bills need to be prepared.
I know.
And as you know, as taxpayers, this year, because the school budget wasn't done, all of those dates needed to be monkeyed around a little bit. And it would seem to me to make sense to have our numbers sooner rather than later.
So I heard you clearly say that we currently don't, but probably will have the option to move town meeting day. If we were to opt to have everything by Australian ballot and have informational meetings leading up to that, sort of effectively, it feels to me like what we would be doing by doing that would be canceling town meeting, but that is not an option. Is that correct, or is that?
There would be no in-person town meeting on March 2nd. I mean, you can't do it. There's no place, under current health protocols, you can't. Normally, about 300 people come to town meeting. There's no building, that size gathering currently is prohibited in Vermont.
Not possible. Yeah.
Right.
So really, we would effectively be canceling town meeting by doing that and having the informational meetings with the Australian ballot as an alternative to that.
Right, and the informational meetings may be virtual.
It's allowable that they're virtual.
Right, right. The informational meetings could be remote, a GoToMeeting platform.
Right.
And I think we have enough licenses to make that possible.
Enough what?
enough go-to-meeting licenses to make that
Oh,
possible.
okay.
I think we have, what, 250 we can have.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
if spouses and partners partner up and are on the same screen, that would be enough to cover the typical attendance at a town meeting. Roughly, I think there were 293 last year that came.
What about the timing and the number of informational meetings we'd have and we have time to do that? I mean, it seems like there's always a push to town meeting, even when town meeting is in person. And what's the logistics of that, and is that realistic?
Well, we're going to have to see. I'm aware of 2 citizen petitions. One has already been in and qualified for the ballot. So my guess is that there's going to have to be more than one.
More than one what? Informational meeting?
Informational meeting.
Okay.
Karen and I have been looking at the warning and the articles, and I think they're likely to be 8, maybe not quite that many.
Yeah, we just erased
but
them.
8, that's a lot to talk about in one meeting. And in the interest of time, do you want to have one 8-hour meeting or 2 2-hour meetings? I think is the question.
So I have a comment about that. For the public informational meetings, so we can have them between February 10th up until March 1st, 2021. But the key about having a public informational meeting is that the town reports need to be in the community's hands.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and we won't have those out until the 3rd week in February. We shoot to have them back in-house around Valentine's Day on the 14th, and then we get them out the following week. But of course, you have a holiday that first Monday. And we also will be collecting our 3rd payment of property taxes on February 19th. So we're going to be pretty busy, but if we went Australian ballot, which I'm still tailoring the town warning, and given what we just heard from Ron Smith, there may be a chance that we may eliminate 1 or 2 other articles, and it will be very simplified. And it may come down to where we're just voting for officers and we're talking about the budgets.
So, John, I'm assuming, and based on what Karen just said about having informational meetings, you were clear that we are not allowed to hold a virtual town meeting. Is it safe to assume we are therefore not allowed to hold an informational meeting on town meeting day?
Current law contemplates that the last informational meeting, I think, has to be 5 days before. I'd have to confirm that. I want to say that the informational meeting has to be 5 days before town meeting day, which puts it in the last week, but the last week of February.
That
Right,
doesn't give us any days at all.
I have the calendar. So one public informational meeting can be held between February 10th and February 19th. And then the legislative body must hold a public informational hearing on any public question or budget to be voted by Australian ballot at town meeting within 10 days of town meeting. So that's from February 20th through March 1st.
So the first one you spoke about, Karen, is optional. The second is a requirement.
Correct.
And the first one would then happen without town reports being with people because we wouldn't have them to them yet. If
That's
it's
correct.
So
we would be looking between February 20th and March 1st. And, that's a detail too that we can sort out.
Bara.
I have 2 questions or comments. The first is that, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Essentially, we would be having the discussion portion of town meeting in these informational meetings, and we'd be having the voting portion of the town meetings as an Australian ballot. So is that correct?
That
Yes.
is-
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to just point out, Eileen Shute made a really good point in the chat, and I don't know if everybody saw it, so I'm just going to read it. It's possible you'd see higher attendance at the town meeting due to the fact that the public might find it easier to attend a remote meeting. So that might mean that the town would need to get more licenses. Is that possible?
I'm not sure that's possible, but we'll look into it. Alyssa and I will. Not
Yeah,
sure.
it's definitely a valid point, and we should explore it. I'm not sure it's a likely reality, but we should be prepared for it if we can.
And
Alyssa?
so I guess, let me just say, if it happened, I suggested if it happens that we have an informational meeting and people are not allowed in, that we then would need to plan a second one
Yes,
and allow those people in.
yes.
Yeah.
Josh,
Yeah,
Yes.
hang on one
school board
hang on
has
one
seen.
sec. Alyssa and Meg, I know you've had your hand up. So actually, Alyssa, if you want to go ahead, and then Meg.
Yeah, didn't John say that we can't hold a virtual town meeting? So
Yeah, we're talking about the informational meetings.
Right.
okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
that's why I was
Got it.
asking that question of whether we could have an informational meeting on town meeting day, because that would be one way to sort of skirt that, but it's not. But that does not sound like we can do it. Meg,
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm not used to GoToMeeting. Sorry about that. My question is, will you be wanting a moderator for these informational meetings? I guess I'm sort of.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Because I think what Karen was saying about how that there's going to be a element where people are going to want to discuss this. And so I just would like to be on top of it and be able to get it in my schedule and not schedule anything against this. Particularly if would not be surprised if each of the informational meetings went on for longer than perhaps we would expect. And so I just, heads up for when those dates are so that I'm sure I'm ready and I know exactly what's on the Australian ballot, et cetera.
Well, thank you, Meg. Yeah, I mean, given the timeline restrictions that are clearly mandated for us, we're going to have to make those decisions pretty soon, just for the same reasons, so that we all are available, et cetera. Liz Adams, I think you had a question or comment?
Yeah, we at the school board, we have had a lot more people at the meetings than we would have had if they were in person. So I would urge you to be really careful. We actually had to stop a meeting because we couldn't let everybody in, and we had to purchase a license. Well, we used Zoom, but we had to get a license so that we could let everybody into the meeting. So just keep that in mind. People are home now. And when people have Zoom meetings, they don't have to go anywhere. So it means if they have kids at home, they can make them lunch while they're at the Zoom meeting. So
right,
I would just be prepared.
And what platform do you folks use, Liz? Is it Zoom or is it GoToMeeting?
It's Zoom.
Okay, because I was going to say, I mean, it's possible that we could, if you already have a license that carries access, we might be able to pony onto that, but we'll have to explore that. John, are you aware of any either statutory or support for that from the Secretary of State, or have you heard anything about how people are managing that?
I have not. I know that there's some money. About $2 million in CARES Act money was just transferred to the Secretary of State's office that can be used to help towns cover election expenses. We also have Karen helped me apply for a grant from the Center for Tech and Civic Life that we used for the general election, and we have a little bit of that money left. So we've been trying to consider, election expenses and using the resources that are available. The Secretary of State's office has been really good. They bought us the new ballot box that Josh, you installed on the front steps of Town Hall. The Center for Tech and Civic Life provided a lot of resources, and we still have some of that money left. We're very mindful of doing it the right way and trying to get as much other people's money as we can, so that the town isn't overly burdened by this. It's just unprecedented times, and we really need to be flexible and mindful, and always consider that we need an election to be safe, secure, and transparent, and that's the way that we've been approaching these issues.
Farah?
So I'm just encouraging, I guess it's Alyssa and Karen and John, that if GoToMeeting doesn't allow more licenses, is it possible for us to switch to Zoom? Because it sounds like they have a lot more flexibility.
Can I just make a comment? I know the library has Zoom. So if it's an issue, we can jump on their license.
They probably have, that's a good point. I personally find Zoom to be a preferred platform for me, but that's because I work from an iPad, and it's way more user-friendly than GoToMeeting is on an iPad, but that may not be true for others. But to Liz's point, my guess is that she is accurate in implying that if we aren't able to allow all the people who want to be present, we just can't hold the meeting.
Right.
So we need to be we got to be able to have a lot of people, even if it doesn't work out that way. We got to make sure that's a possibility.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
2 brief points. First, our town clerk has demonstrated this evening how excellent he is. We are fortunate that he is working for the town of Putney.
Yes, I think we all agree on that one.
Secondly, oh, you're welcome, John. None of us gets enough compliments, so when they're deserved, I try to pay them, and this one is for sure. You've talked about possible ways of holding town meeting, but I've not heard you mention holding town meeting outdoors, and I'm going to offer this suggestion. If you postpone town meeting until the weather is better, Cooper's Field would be the place to have a socially distanced town meeting, and Next Stage Arts can tell you how to do it, because they put on several performances there back during the summer, which went off very well.
Remind me where you're talking of? Say again.
Softball field.
Cooper's Field, the softball field on Sand Hill Road.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have thought about that. I think the thing that would be so complicated about it is how weather dependent it would be. Even if we were to put it off till, say, June, where we could probably safely assume that the temperature would be acceptable, then what do you do in a thunderstorm? The logistics of that, and I'm not discounting what you're saying, and I think it would be great if we could do it. I worry about how it would happen, but
well, indeed, Mr. Chairman, you have raised valid points, but my point is simply that Next Stage Arts pulled it off several times, so quite possibly we could too, and they can show us how.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the decision-making process on our part surrounding that, well, obviously it'll depend on steps the legislature takes, but also, what is the value if we go ahead and do things by Australian ballot, which my own personal feeling would be that the timeliness of those decisions being made around March 2nd is pretty important. Not insurmountable if we can't do it then, but then what would be the value of having a meeting in in June if we've already done that. And one of the values would be just to bring the community together to have a town meeting, which is not insignificant. But if we weren't making, if we've already voted, then does that make sense? So, and I'm not proposing anything. I'm just sort of thinking out loud about that. And I'm not sure. I wanted to clarify one more thing also, John. You said that if town meeting is delayed, then people who, Barra is our obvious example of somebody who was appointed to a position and her term would be up on March 2nd. If town meeting was delayed, even if we had, I mean, if we chose to do things by Australian ballot, are we then, for all practical purposes, saying we're not going to hold an in-person town meeting? Or I'm not still 100% clear on that.
That's the option under the current statute. In lieu of an in-person town meeting, all issues could be decided by Australian ballot, and the Select Board currently has the authority to make that decision under Act 162.
Okay.
The pending legislation would conceivably allow the towns to reschedule the town meeting, and along with that, any elected officers' terms would continue until the rescheduled town meeting.
Because then the voting would be done at the time of that town meeting, is that correct?
Correct. I mean, we already have, the school district has already picked March 2nd for their Australian ballot. So no matter what the town does, there's an election that day that we're going to be doing.
Right.
Okay. Karen?
Oh, one question, and I think we talked about this, Jonathan, but as far as other business that would be conducted on the floor, such as non-binding resolutions, those would go on a ballot?
Well, we don't know what they are, so I think those would just take a year off.
Well, yeah, my take on that, Karen, is that the ones that have been presented to us that I had sort of described as what I would consider non-binding resolutions, since it would not be an option to have non-binding resolutions done from the floor if we can't have a virtual town meeting, that they would be, and I think this is what's happening, is that those are being tailored to be Australian ballot questions. I think that, you know what, and I'm assuming maybe, John, you or somebody has been consulted about the nature of the language in order to allow for that. For example, and Jane, I know I saw you on here before. I don't know whether you're still on, but I know like Jane's read certainly like a non-binding resolution and was very long, and I don't think that would be allowed as a warning as it was written. Jane, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it would be rewritten as an article. The last two resolves would be the article.
Okay, that was my assumption. Okay. So, you know, essentially we would not, I think John's right. We would, for all practical purposes, have no non-binding resolutions this year. We would either have.
I'm not sure that that's what I said. Typically at the end of town meeting, there are non-binding resolutions that are introduced from the floor on a variety of topics. What we have now is I'm expecting two what I would describe as non-binding resolutions that have garnered sufficient voter signatures to be placed on the Australian ballot.
Correct.
One is already qualified, and I'm expecting to talk to Jane tomorrow.
Okay. And so can a non-binding resolution appear as an article? Is that so? Is that what you're saying? Or
I think that if it has signatures of 5% of the electorate, it must appear.
Right. No, I know. But does it appear? Does it have to be written in such a way? Well, yeah, I guess this will become apparent in the process. does it have to be written in such a way so that it doesn't read, can a non-binding article be by Australian ballot? And I guess maybe the answer is yes, or?
Yeah, I think that it can, and it has to be,
Mm.
the question must have a yes or no answer.
Exactly.
You know, shall we recommend that the town of Putney Select Board do X, Y, and Z?
Right.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a yes or no question. And that's the way that it's going to be presented and tallied on election day, whenever that is.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I have to say that the previous discussion regarding non-binding resolutions and the two that are being petitioned is incorrect. They are not non-binding resolutions. I'm now quoting statute. The warning shall also contain any article or articles requested by a petition signed by at least 5% of the voters and filed with the town clerk not less than 47 days before the day of the meeting. These are town articles, these are warning articles, exactly like any other warning article that you, the select board, put on the warning. There is no distinction drawn between them. They are not non-binding resolutions which come up under other business informally. These are formal articles which have the same legal standing as any other article. I'm quoting 17 VSA 2642 A3A.
That's what I was trying to clarify, and I just don't know yet. So thank you for clarifying that. I mean, yeah, I guess what John said, which is correct, which is sort of the difference about that versus a non-binding, is that there has to be a yes or, it has to be something that can be specifically voted on. And often non-binding articles are written that way, sort of, but not completely. So I thank you for clarifying that. So it's just a yes or no. It just has to be votable by Australian ballot, and then it'll qualify as an article.
This is correct, Mr. Chairman. In this regard, I have advised one of the petitioners that they might wish to speak with Salmon and Nostrand, the town attorney, about how to word it so that it qualifies. And I did that on the grounds that actually the town attorney works for everyone in Putney, not just for the select board and town manager. So indeed, it has to be formulated properly, but once it's been successfully petitioned, the question of exactly how to word it is simply a matter of legal advice to make sure, as you say, that it is yes or no, and also it can contain no argument for or against the article.
So yes, I agree with that. I guess the one question I have about that then is, if people have signed a petition about a specific thing, can you then rewrite it to adapt it to be? Do those signatures collected have to be collected based on the article as it is presented? I don't know whether that's clear or not, and I guess that would be a legal counsel question. But if Jane is collecting signatures based on the resolution or the article as she had it presented before, can she then tailor it to be an article that's a different way? And I guess what I would say, and I hope that my fellow select persons would agree with me, is that if somebody comes to us with a petition that has been has sufficient signatures on it and is therefore valid, that we would be willing, if that needed tailoring in order to be read as an article, we would be willing to then adopt it as an article.
You have that authority.
We do have that authority.
Yes.
Right. Now, I know we have that authority. I guess I want to give some confidence to Jane in this instance. I think is the one with an outstanding, that even if it is not completely written as it will appear tomorrow, but she has collected all the signatures based on the based on the nature of the article, that we will either work with her or accept an article and approve it for the warning once it has been adapted to how it needs to be written. Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually called the lawyer that Howard kindly told me about, and they said they cannot talk to me because the town office hires them and not me. But in reflecting on this, I submitted what I call resolution to the town office, and nobody told me it was written wrong. And I just think in the name of democracy, there should be some time before it's too late that a citizen can get guidance on how to write these things.
Well, I agree with you. I think that the thing that's complicated this is that we're working in a situation that we've never had to work in before, because it would have been clear to me that, well, you could have still petitioned even in the absence of a town meeting, but I think your resolution more likely would have fallen into the category of a non-binding resolution were we proceeding with a regular town meeting. And I don't disagree with you at all. I just think that we're all taking this one step at a time as to how we have to, does the horse go before the cart or the cart go before the horse? And until only as we get clarification on things are we able to clarify. So, but what I'm saying, Jane, is that I am guessing I would have the support of my fellow select persons, that if the intent of the article is clear, but it is not written as it needs to be in order to meet the legal requirement, that we would, as the select board, based on the intent that was conveyed by the signatures of 5% of the population, we would allow an article to be rewritten that would convey the intent that you have, even if it wasn't, that article was not specifically signed by the petitions, because I'm guessing, or by petitioners, because I'm guessing that we could, if we chose to, disallow it for that reason. And I'm just saying, I don't think that'll happen. So
I appreciate that, Josh, and you did say that, but in fact, the entire select board has not said that. So it's not, I don't feel totally assured by that, but my point still stands that even without COVID, my intent was to submit it as a petition, because then it gets on the warning, right? And there can be educationals beforehand. And if a citizen wants to submit that, it's very confusing. And I think when the town office is called, someone should help guide the writing of those things, if it's a petition.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
The statute is clear that a properly petitioned article, that has gained signatures of at least 5% of town voters by 47 days before town meeting, shall appear in the warrant. There is no discretion granted to you as a select board.
I fully understand that, but I also, I mean, I don't know whether you've seen that resolution. I don't think we can. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I have never seen an article of that nature, i.e., a page-long series of whereases and heretofores that appears as a warned article. So I don't know whether we can do that. So that's what I agree with you, Mr. Fairman, and I think that's what I'm trying to convey, is that if the intent is clear, but the article is not written in a way that we can actually have it on an Australian ballot, then we will work to make that happen because of the requirement you're talking about. I mean, it's been legitimately petitioned, but we perhaps didn't have enough expertise to guide the process in how to rewrite it as an article versus a resolution in a timely fashion. So
no, Of course, Mr. Chairman, it is too bad that Salmon and Nostrand decided, as it is we who are paying them, not the town of Putney, not as select board and town manager, that they would not speak to Dr. Katzfield, but this is now moot. However, 24 VSA section 2666 says that there can be no argument for or against the article. In other words, all the whereases are out. They are simply a violation of Vermont statute. And it comes down just to the two resolves, which will have to be combined into a single article that can be voted yes or no. So it's really not that complex. And my essential point is you as a select board have no discretion whatsoever about including the article on the warrant.
And that, and yes, yeah. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think where it's complex for me is that if the way it was petitioned does not meet the requirement for it being an article, then we have to reconcile that. And so that's where I'm saying that we will. But yes, basically, given what you're pointing out as a statutory requirement, it obligates us to do it correctly. So Jane, there's your assurance. And we'll just have to figure out what the right language is. And if we need counsel to weigh in on that from our perspective, that's fine, because we still have how long, Karen, until we have to approve our articles?
We have until January 27th.
So we've got 2 weeks to make sure, and I'm happy to work with you personally, Jane, if we need to do that in order to make sure that article appears the way it was intended. And I guess that's what I'm trying to convey, is that if the intent is there and the signatures are there, we will make sure it appears as it should, because it has been duly petitioned. Go ahead.
And one other comment I wanted to make is when we get our warning in a draft format, I usually send it over to Larry for review. And then when it comes back, it gets finalized and it gets approved in that last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be one chance for legal counsel to review the town articles.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. And I think it would be to our advantage to have written that article in a way that, you know, unless there's a little adjustment here or there, but that they're going to approve of it anyway. So instead of having to try and rework it once they have looked. So I'm happy to work on that with you, and I'm sure we can involve, well, we can involve legal counsel. We can also, if we need to, involve the Vermont League of Cities and Towns or the Secretary of State's office to make sure it's worded correctly. So,
Thanks.
All right. So moving right along.
May I please ask a question?
Sorry, who is that? I don't have you on.
This is Emily Payton.
Go ahead.
Hi. I've been looking to find out what the process is as well, and I apologize, I joined a little bit late, but my understanding is that you're going to do everything as an Australian article, and that we have to run it by the lawyer, and that you're going to finalize it on the 27th. My question is, does that mean we yet have another couple of weeks to submit one, or has that date gone? Because I was asking about this before and didn't get a clear answer. So
no,
the date for submitting articles based on collecting petition signatures is tomorrow at 5 p.m. As I told you last week, Emily.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
No, and that the difference you're talking about, Emily, is just when we, basically it's when we as a select board then have to approve those articles. Once you've submitted them to the town clerk's office, they then, I mean, because those are required because they've been appropriately petitioned, then we have to put them on, we have to warn them. but we don't have to actually create that, the copy of that warning for a couple more weeks, so.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I have, pretty much too much on my plate to go that route this year.
This time
But
around.
I was, keeping options open.
Yeah. All right. So
Josh, do you want me to read the next item?
I'm looking at it now. Let's see. We've done Green Lantern. We've done Town Clerk guidance. John, thank you very much for all your
You're welcome,
input.
everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks,
You
John.
too. And we did Auditor. So Liz, I think that puts you next in line.
Okay, well, we would like for for you guys to have us as part of the meeting, the school district, because last year we were not, and it was the end of town meeting and most people had left. And because we were merged, I'm really worried about the connection with the town and the people in the town. Not very many people from Putney show up at school board meetings. We have some regulars who come. So if you could put us, properly get us in the meeting so that we have time that we can, say a little spiel and take questions from people about what's going on in the district, that would be very helpful to us.
Okay, given the discussion we've just been having about whether we're actually going to have town meeting or not, and my guess is, well, I don't know. That's a discussion we need to have. But it may be that there's correct me if I'm wrong, Liz and or Karen, but there is nothing on our Australian ballot that would be related to the school. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that, did you get anything from David Scholes or the district's attorney? Because
Yes, Liz, we did. And I thought Jonathan was going to do 2 separate ballots, but I can't answer that question for him.
okay, because that would be to dissolve the merger.
Correct. Now,
Yeah.
in your packet, select board members, is the email from David?
From David Scholes?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Where
in
our packet?
It was sent to Jonathan Johnson.
Can you direct me where? I don't know. I actually don't know if I have a packet.
Yeah, I sent packets out.
Can you tell me what day?
Let me just go to my email. You would have received it in your packet. Hang on, I gotta go to the site. David, you have yours? David?
Yes, I have mine.
Do you know where you got it, or did you go into town and get it?
I don't have to go.
Hang on, Vera.
No, I printed it here. Yep. I got it in an, I think I printed it today, but I think I got the email yesterday.
No, it was sent out today around 1:28.
Oh, is this the go-to meeting?
Yes, it's all in that link.
Yeah, I don't think I have David Scholes in there though.
Yeah, he's in there.
He is? Okay.
David Babbitt has it, so.
Printed it off right here.
Oh,
It's like
Scholes,
the
yeah,
third
I
page.
see it. So it's Putney Manager. It's page 5 of 13, Bara.
Thank you.
So Liz, are you not going to have this article in your?
No, they wanted it on each town's articles.
Is there a reason for that? Did they explain?
I think it's just to simplify everything and have everybody vote at the same time. And because the school used to be part of town meeting.
Correct.
I think that's the other rationale behind it. We had a specially warned vote when we voted against the proposed merger. But normally school stuff would take place at town meetings. So I think that's really the rationale, to have people voting at the same time.
So
Though at
what
this
about,
point, we don't know. Go ahead.
what about the school budget? Where is that article gonna be?
That's a good question. We don't know if we're going to have a budget by the time town meeting takes place because we have not gotten the information we need from the state. So we can't give people property tax, their education property tax rates.
Not
We
again.
didn't have that last year anyway, right?
Right. We didn't have our budget vote until June 30th last year.
Right, and then we had to wait 30 days.
It's a whole, it's a whole different, I mean, it's not dependent on town meeting, Karen, so it falls
Right.
on a different
Right.
vote. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Fairman.
at 2020 Putney Town Meeting, I was the parliamentarian when this matter came up. The people from the school wanted to speak. There's a couple of legal issues here. The first one is that the town of Putney is a municipality. The Windham Southeast School District also is a municipality. Now, a town meeting is solely for the town of Putney, and by law, only articles on the warning can be discussed at Putney Town Meeting. And this could not include articles regarding the Windham Southeast School District because it is a separate municipality. My suggestion would be that the school district get legal advice about how to handle the voting. But as far as speaking to us at town meeting, which is an excellent idea, I would suggest that we could do, and what we should have done last year, was to invite them to speak before the meeting before a Putney Town Meeting is called to order, just as we invited our legislators to speak at that time. Because once the meeting has called to order, we cannot discuss school business. We can only discuss town of Putney warning articles.
Okay,
My understanding was that David, this went to the attorney. So that seems to clash with what Mr. Fairman's saying. So I don't know the answer to that.
I'm sure it did, but I am absolutely certain that under Vermont law at town meeting, only articles that are on the warning may be discussed. And for the simple reason that otherwise people can slip something in and people don't know. That is the whole purpose of warning a meeting, that everyone knows exactly what is going to happen at the meeting. And there's also no doubt whatsoever that the Windham Southeast School District is legally entirely separate from the town of Putney. Both are municipalities under Vermont statute, and they have to have separate meetings.
So the question is whether these could be submitted as articles on the Putney Town warning, and then they could be discussed if we have town meeting.
May I?
But
Josh, may I?
It's not town business.
Josh?
Yes.
This is Ruby McAdoo. I just wanted to interject because I've been attending the school board meetings, and I just pulled up the statute on one of the Vermont legislature websites, that because the statute related to dissolution of a school district is a town thing. And so each of the towns has to make the vote. And that's why the school board is bringing this to the town, because the school board could warn it, and the school board could do that vote, and it wouldn't be what is required under this particular statute.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Ruby. I forgot. Yeah. I have the statutes written down that are pertinent to the dissolution of a merger.
Yeah, no, and it's clear from how this is written that would be the intent, is that this is placed on. So we just, again, everything we do gets vetted for the articles gets vetted through council anyway. So we should just, have you, Karen, already sent this to Larry by any chance?
No, I have not.
Okay, so we should just make sure he has it sooner rather than later. I mean, if the district has done their, if the SU has done their homework, which I'm assuming they have, then it should be a non-issue, but we should just make sure.
Josh?
Yes.
Ruby, before you leave, can you just cite the statute that you're looking at, please?
I just put it into the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll put the website there too.
Okay, so Liz, I guess basically what we need to do is just, whether, I mean, if these end up being placed on our warning, then the topic would come up in the informational meeting. So we'll just have to coordinate on what that means if and when we go that route, or if we're gonna move town meeting day, we'll just have to coordinate with you on that. So either way, if these get placed on our warning, then obviously it would be legitimate discussion point. And then we'll have to, I mean, this year may be just an oddball, whether we sort of how we have school discussion, broader school discussion unrelated to these articles included in town meeting is, I'm not sure how that's going to work this year, so we'll have to think that one through too. But we will remind ourselves that you have requested this. Farah?
Ruby, I don't see the statute in the chat. I don't know if there's something on my end, but could you just state it?
Yeah, I sent it to Liz directly. It's 16 VSA 724.
724?
To every.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And Josh, I want to say one more thing. I want to thank all of you at the town. You have put in ridiculous hours during this COVID mess. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate all the time you've put in and everything you've done. I appreciate it very much. So thank you all.
I'm guessing you deserve the same thanks on the school board end. So right back at you.
Thank you, Liz.
Yep.
Okay, so our next item then would be.
Josh?
So we're going to.
This is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to be really clear on this because it sounds like the deadline for citizen submitted warnings is tomorrow. And to the extent that the school board requesting that the select board put this on the town warning doesn't happen. If that mechanism isn't going to happen, I know that there are citizens who are interested in making sure this is a warned item and that the ball moves forward. And so I feel nervous for those citizens because if you deliberate and you think about it and you're legally allowed to, but it's not something you choose to do, then there's no recourse for those citizens to actually put forward, a petitioned warning. I guess that's just me acknowledging that.
It's too bad it wasn't sent to us previous to January 11th, because that would have been helpful. I honestly, John, are you still on? No.
I think he left.
He's left.
As you probably know, Ruby, I have a relatively close personal relationship with the nature of this beast, so I would probably recuse myself from voting on that one way or the other, because I think that would be appropriate. I haven't fully decided that because I don't know. I guess all I can say is that, I don't know whether David feels equipped to comment on that in his role as vice chair, or whether I should say that if people want it to be absolutely assured, then they need to go about it the way that would absolutely assure it. And I beyond that, I will step out of the conversation.
Karen has her hand up. I'd like to hear from Karen.
So I have one question to Ruby and Liz. So apparently all towns need to have this article warned in order to move forward to withdraw. Is that correct? And all towns have to agree to withdraw.
Is that what it says, or does it say that the other towns have to approve of one town withdrawing? I'm not sure how to read that.
Wait, if the merger is to be dissolved, all towns need to vote yes to dissolve the merger. One
Okay,
town
that's different
cannot
from
get
what it
out of the
says.
merger by itself. And the reason this is coming up is because the legislature neglected to take the statute off the books that allows the dissolution of a merger. That's why it was all kind of, it's like at the last minute, but Reedsboro and I think it was Halifax, they voted to dissolve their merger, and it was approved by the State Board of Education, which is the body that has to do that. And because that one was allowed, now the floodgates are open, particularly in districts that were forced to merge against the will of their voters. And the feeling of the board is that because our vote was disallowed basically by the AOE and the State Board of Education, that the citizens of Putney deserve the opportunity while the window's open to vote to either stay with the merge board or to dissolve the merger. I think democracy calls for that in light of what the state did to our towns. They just ignored our vote. And it was an overwhelming vote to not merge.
So,
David, just to reply to that, I think what you may be thinking of is when before we were merging, we all voted, each of the towns, on Vernon leaving the district.
No.
And we had to approve that one town's leaving. But with the dissolution of the whole district, it has to be an approved vote in each town.
Right.
And so if our 4 towns vote and one of them says no, it kind of shoots us in the foot. So, but if the only way to move forward with the process is for all 4 towns to vote yes, dissolve.
And so are all 4 towns, all the other towns moving forward with this?
As far as we know, yes, but I could check with David Scholes, but because we didn't know until so late, and he sent it to you as soon as he got it back from the attorney. I'm sorry, my dog is barking. So that's why you got it so late.
Well, I hear that, and that seems really important, and sadly, I don't have a lot of history with this, and I don't have a lot of history on statutes or our articles. This is my second year as a selectman and a select person, and I'm not sure how to proceed. I think it is important that people vote on things. I totally believe in democracy that way, but not sure exactly how to handle it. So,
David, I have a question. David, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
What's the number of votes that are needed, or petition signatures is needed by tomorrow at 5?
Roughly 90, I believe it is. It's 5% of the electorate. So
It's either 93 or 95.
Is that a doable thing, Ruby?
No.
Not by tomorrow.
No.
I think we understood 100 as being the goal. I think you have a little bit more than 90, just so that you have some wiggle room. But
Right.
Ultimately, I think, and I can once we get off the phone here, I can talk to Liz, and I'm confident that my little core of doers could go out and get 100 signatures.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's a lot of legwork to do. And I'm saying this as I am not the banner,
I don't hold the flag of this. I just
Got it.
am showing up. I've been informed, and I want the people who are very passionate about it to be able to not have their voices not heard. So anyway, I hear you, and that's good. I just want to call out that this is, as many things are in this year, frustrating because we have this time crunch, and it is not a time crunch from the citizens' perspective. It's not a time crunch because people were asleep at the wheel. Like, we've been watching and waiting and waiting and waiting and all that. So I'll move to activate that and see if we can get our ducks in a row before 5 p.m. tomorrow to be safe.
Question: will the other communities in the school district be able to do that? Is there any people you can call in your group of doers? Are there doers in other towns? Because you're going to jump through all these hoops, and you're the only town to get the signatures and only put the petition, get it together. Then why would you do that? So maybe a few phone calls.
I can email people, and I probably won't get a response until tomorrow morning. I'm not sure why there's such a hesitancy to put it on the articles for Putney.
That's what I want to talk about. I wanted to ask, so first, I just want to ask, are there any signatures yet?
No.
Okay. Is the warning specifically worded yet?
I believe you got did David send you the language? Because that would have come from the attorney.
Yes.
Attorney.
Is it the language in his memo or his email that we got? Is that the language?
I believe
Where
so.
is
I didn't
it?
get the email.
Shall the voters of the town of Putney authorize the town to withdraw from the Windham Southeast School District? Shall the voters of the town of Putney conditionally approve and ratify the withdrawal of the towns of Brattleboro, Dummerston, and/or Guilford from the Windham Southeast School District, subject to the certification of results from the respective town votes to withdraw on March 2nd, 2021?
That would be it.
That's it. I am fine. I don't know historically. I have heard enough of my neighbors talking about this issue that I know that it's very important. So I feel comfortable from that perspective saying that I think this is important, and I would want it to be the town to be able to vote on it. I don't want to step on toes as far as procedurally setting a precedent of allowing this in when we'd have to do it for others. I don't know about those.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
There actually is a 3-day leeway on this. I'm going to read some of the statute. The clerk receiving the petitions shall immediately proceed to examine them to ascertain whether they contain the required number of signatures. If found not to conform, he or she shall state in writing on the petition why it cannot be accepted, and within 24 hours from receipt, he or she shall return it to the petitioners. In this case, supplementary petitions may be filed not later than 48 hours after the petition was returned to the petitioners by the clerk. So you actually have 2 days after tomorrow to get it done. Get as many as you can. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. You have to get, the statute continues, supplementary petitions shall not be accepted if petitions with signatures of different persons totaling at least the number specified were not filed by the filing deadline. So get as many signatures in as you can to get over 100. And then if some of them get rejected, you will get 48 hours to find more signatures. So it isn't necessary that the initial petition be perfect as long as there are enough signatures to be 5% of the voters, which John told me 2 or 3 days ago was 1,956 voters. I believe that comes to 98 as 5%. But as long as you get in something like 100 or a few more signatures than that, even if some of them are rejected, you then get 48 hours to fix it.
You do, though, Barra, have the option of, the select board, has the option of just approving these as articles. And I don't want to impede that process at all. It's not a requirement that the 2 ways that an article gets on is either we, the select board, accept it as an article and therefore it gets warned, which is what's being requested, or if we don't agree to that, then it's petitioned, and then
Okay.
if the petition is valid, then we are required to place it on. So,
Mr. Chairman, you are correct.
I am not adverse to these articles, to this select board accepting these articles. I just feel that it is, my wife was the chair of the committee that
Okay.
went through the whole process. So I feel like it's too personal for me to be objective about. So I would recuse myself, but I wouldn't object to you two voting on that if you choose to do that. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, I understand it a lot better now. Thank you for that, Josh. I have nothing against having this as an article. I think it's fine to have this as an article.
So I'm going to move that the select board vote to have this article warned.
These two articles
These
warned.
two articles warned.
Is that correct, Ruby? It's two articles, isn't it? Yes.
Okay, and I second that.
Okay, so
I have a question. Westminster just did this. I didn't realize that they had to have Athens and Grafton agree. I thought that the vote, Alyssa, you must know this, living in Westminster.
I can actually speak to that.
Okay.
It was in the paper also. There was an article about it, but that is a different instance. And so Westminster voted, and then that set the stage for the other towns to vote on town meeting day. That's my understanding. Karen might have some insight too. And also, by the way, Dummerston did vote on this today, and their select board did warn it for their town meeting.
Great.
Thanks, Ruby.
Karen.
So I have a question, because I did follow Westminster a little bit, and I did come across the actual town warning for them to withdraw, but they also created their own school board. Is that something you're looking for the town to do, or you're going to do that on your own?
Okay, we would need to do that, but the merger, you would be dissolving the merger, but it wouldn't, the district would still exist in fiscal year 22. And then it
Okay.
would be the following year. So there would be time to assemble a board at next year's town meeting. That's, yeah, it wouldn't be like, okay, on June 30th, we are trying to scrambling, and we're trying to get, well, first of all, trying to get people to the board, elected to the board, and then doing budgets. That it can't happen. It's too much to get done too soon. So it would be, okay, makes sense?
So
Yes.
are there more questions that
No, I'm good.
Okay, do you want to do this, Josh, or what?
So yeah, I mean, I said I was going to recuse myself. More accurately, I will abstain from voting on it. So it's been moved. David, you seconded it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to approve accepting the proposed articles as presented by David Scholes for warning on the Putney Town meeting. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
David?
Aye. Oh, am I muted? Okay.
No, you're not.
I just didn't hear you. And I'm not opposed, but I'm going to abstain. So 2 votes in the affirmative, and it passes.
Thank you. And
Welcome.
I want to be clear, Josh, you know I was very strongly against the merger. What I can say is, thank God we were merged for COVID. Trying to navigate COVID with 4 different districts would have been quite the mess. It would have, our superintendent would have probably quit by now. The guy from the Frank Rucker, the business manager, he wouldn't have had enough time to try to get everything all set up with all the schools and, the fully remote program that's open to every child in the district. So, I've seen some benefits. I also see the risks lying ahead. But I'm on the board, and we've got a nice board for the time being, at least, we've got a really collaborative board, which is great, but that's not a guarantee for the future. But I've seen benefits, you know, from, especially because of COVID. I think it would have been next to impossible to get things settled and working well. If we had been 4 different districts, would have been a mess. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Ruby, for coming, because my brain's mush. Thanks. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank
We'll
you.
get out
Bye.
of here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to, as per request from Karen, we're going to table discussion on general and highway budgets for until.
Josh, can I interrupt?
Yep.
Yeah. Can we discuss the town warning? Because we do have 2 guests here from the Putney Gun Club. They've been patiently waiting. As you know,
Sorry, and that's just a change of order. So town warning articles. Okay, yep,
yes.
that's
Yep.
fine with me.
Yep. So in one of the articles, Putney Gun Club is going to be voted on for exemption for a 5-year period. If you recall from last year, the voters voted to exempt them for one year because there was not much happening. They have since regrouped, and I have Dan Dietz here and Joshua Emond, and they're both
Hey, everybody.
Whole lot of background noise from somewhere.
Before you start, I don't understand what you're saying. Exemption for what?
From taxes, Sarah.
Okay.
From paying municipal taxes in the town of Putney.
Thank you.
So, and there certain, Karen, go ahead.
Somebody's got a loud noise happening.
All right, hang on. All right,
There you
everybody's
go.
muted.
That's better.
That's better. So the exemption is going to be for 5 years, Farah. So basically, they're exempt from paying any property taxes for the next 5 years.
No, but
And
not education taxes, just municipal taxes.
Right. Just
not what
municipal.
taxes?
Sorry, say that again, Sarah.
You said not what taxes?
Not education tax. We can't exempt them from the education tax,
Right.
but we, the voters of Putney, can exempt them from paying to Putney Town municipal taxes.
So I want to let you guys present my question. You can wait to answer it after if you want, is how much income would that leave us without?
I'd have to look it up. I don't have it.
So I think what, you know, we need to be careful about, our decision is not, I'm not even sure we decide whether to put this on here, Karen, do we? I mean, this is
Yes,
a
we do.
legitimate.
Yes, legally, they're up to be put on the town warning as an exemption. So the listers get a list every year, and then those entities go on the town warning.
Okay, but to be clear, what was voted on last year, because this came up last year as a request for 5 years, and
Correct.
it was modified. The article was then amended to allow them to be exempted for a year, and then the discussion would continue. Because an article can be modified from the floor if it's voted to be amended by the voters present. So basically, they asked for 5 years last year. The voters agreed to allow an additional year, more or less, while they regrouped.
Right.
And then it would come back. So for me, the decision is all but made that we are obligated by nature of the discussion we had last year to place this on as a warrant article, because essentially that's what we said we would do. So
Without
I
any vote or discussion or anything on our part, we don't need to do anything.
Well, we don't need to, we'll need to vote to approve all the articles before they actually go on. But I'm just saying, I don't feel the need, I don't want to make Josh, and sorry, I'm not sure who the other person is, sort of argue this point in front of us when the reality is who they need to argue it with is the voters. So Karen, go ahead.
So this is on the warning because of 32 VSA section 38327. And both Dan and Josh are here because they need to speak to this and let the board know what they've done. They'll have a second chance if we go to a public informational meeting. But it's important that the board understands that last year, they only had a year to regroup, reorganize, and they've done that. And I think it's important that it.
Right. So what I'm saying, Karen, is that my recollection, and I don't know whether this would be reflected in the minutes or not, but was that essentially we allowed a year of exemption and then agreed that it would be again brought before the voters. So I would not in good conscience be able to not put this on as a warning, because I do not think that would be fair of us to do.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying is I don't feel like we need to have that discussion. And again, sorry, Josh, for making you sit through all you have this evening, but really this is an argument you need to present to the voters, not to us, because we already said this would be an article again next year, I think. Go ahead, Barra, and then David.
I just have a question because I'm looking at the articles, and Josh, I heard you say that they're not exempt from educational taxes, but the article says, shall the voters exempt the Putney Gun Club from municipal and educational taxation?
Oh, it does? Okay. So, sorry, I misspoke then.
My question is to Dan and to Josh, and you feel the need to present it to us because instead of the voters?
I asked them to be here.
I see. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Just trying to get on the same page here. Okay, got it.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. If Josh or Dan, you want to make any comments, I'm open to that. I just, I don't think it's really at our. I mean, it is at our discretion, but I do not think it would be appropriate for us to not put it in front of the voters again, because that's basically what we said we would do last year. So if we were to not do that, then that wouldn't be right.
I agree with Josh that it should go before the voters, and maybe we could just take a couple minutes and hear what you have to say, not argue your point, but maybe you could just tell us what you've done in the last year, considering it was contingent.
Purpose of them being here, yes.
Yes,
right.
That'd be great.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I took over as president just a few short months ago, and I don't know a lot of the history of the club, so all this is good information for me. I'm increasing the membership of the club. We're becoming more active. So we're in the midst of regrouping, and we're moving towards becoming a club again, which is pretty difficult to do during this pandemic. And have been making plans to do like hunter safety courses again, which has been a history of the club, and looking to continue that tradition, as well as sending some of the Putney Central School children to the Fish and Wildlife Camp in the state. So basically trying to continue the traditions that were started and become more organized with what's going on there. So we've made some building improvements. We replaced the stairs that were outside that were pretty well falling down, which are needed for the hunter safety course to function properly, to be safe. So that's that's just a small overview. I believe we've increased the membership by 4 or 5 people, and probably have lost a few people too. So we haven't had a real survey about that. So, anyways,
I think we've increased membership by 20 plus people in the last
wow.
5 or 6 months. Yeah.
Amazing. So I'm one of the new members.
We have close to 30 right now.
Oh, good.
And I get a call a week looking for information on the club. I'm meeting a guy there Sunday to kind of give him a tour of the place, show him around, let him know what the scope of the club is, what we're going to be doing, what we aim to do. And yeah, it's been really good. I talked to a lady probably 3 weeks ago that hasn't shot since she was a little kid with her dad, and she still had her father's old 22 and was super excited about shooting it. So I had her drop it off. I got it cleaned up for her, and hopefully when COVID's over, we can meet down there and get her shooting again. But people are excited about it. I'm getting a lot of phone calls, and I'm enjoying it.
If somebody is interested, and I'll say I have a personal investment in this because my son is very interested. How do people engage you guys if they're interested in being part of it?
Probably the easiest way is the Facebook page.
Okay.
You can find us right on Facebook, and there's a link to Dan's email address. And I don't think we have a website. We're pretty much just Facebook right now and word of mouth.
Okay, sounds good.
So you said a minute ago you would meet somebody to tour them around, tell them what you're doing and what you're thinking and what you're planning, and maybe just a couple sentences to tell me that. That would be great.
Yeah. All right, Dan, I'll leave that one to you.
So yeah, if you want to meet there at some point, we could go around and just look it over and give you a tour, I guess, if that's what you're interested in. Obviously.
Yeah. What do you plan on doing? What are your plans there?
Just increasing safety awareness, safety programs, continuing a hunter safety course there. The Fish and Wildlife Camp for the Putney Central School students is like a scholarship fund that we established that we've been discussing for, and I believe it's been a tradition for 1 or 2 students a year to go to that Fish and Wildlife Camp.
Yeah.
So that's going to continue. Obviously, expanding membership is an interest.
Do you own the building? Does the gun club own the building and the land there?
I believe so.
Okay, all right.
Barry, you have a question?
So this isn't really probably the right place, but we have a huge deer population problem on our land, as Josh knows. I would love it if the gun club actually educated people about the need for more hunters for deer, for the health of our forests.
Yeah, that's important, and that's hence the hunter safety course, which hasn't been an easy thing to do with the pandemic. You know, obviously in-person gathering isn't happening, so which is moved the hunter safety classes to online only, and that I don't believe is really a good way to teach conservation and you know, environmental and safety. So.
Excuse me, Dan. I have a question. Dan, are any of those 30 people qualified to teach the hunter safety course?
We have 2 people, I believe, that are certified to teach by the Fish and Wildlife to teach the hunter safety course that are in the club.
Yeah,
Great.
And
Great. And the only gun that used at the training there is a 22. Is that right?
That's the maximum caliber that we'll allow in the building. Yes.
All right. Well, I hunted squirrels I had my own 22 down in Florida by the time I was 10 years old, and hunted squirrels. We ate squirrels. There's way too many squirrels. Never mind the deer. Let's get some people on the 22s after the. And I was the one who really raised Cain about giving a 5-year to the gun club, because the building over the years had deteriorated.
It has been, yeah.
Yeah.
That was,
So
So we're looking at,
I want you to know I support it if the care of that building, because otherwise it looked, why would anybody want to join something? It looked like a junk heap.
exactly.
Okay. Thank you for your work.
So we're looking at increasing our liability insurance with the state, so that would allow us to be approved for funding grants to make larger improvements to the building, like lighting and ventilation, and identify the shooting lanes better, that sort of thing. So
Well, there was some grants way back when, and I mentioned it to the chap 2 years ago, and he said, well, we, and it was written up in the paper. Those grants were available.
yeah, and we
So
just
you're gonna
missed it.
You're gonna follow through, or you missed it?
Yeah, we missed this year, which the grant applications were due by the end of July. And, I didn't have a whole lot of time to plan after coming on board. So we're moving towards that. The grants happen yearly, apparently. So we'll be moving towards that this coming July to try and get some money from the state and the Fish and Wildlife. So
I encourage you to speak to they're very busy, the senators and representatives, to let them know that there is a need for that kind of support. And there must be some other financial support that's available out there.
Absolutely.
But anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for everybody for support.
In that regard, Dan, I would just say that if letters of support from the town are helpful, I'm guessing you would have a receptive audience. I mean, I'm aware that the state is working hard to increase this effort across the state. So I would think grant money would be relatively easy to come by, but I think you also probably have a friendly audience for support of grants if you are looking for it.
Oh, well, that's very much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks everybody for the support. And we'll definitely be applying for the grants. So there's some much needed improvements. Obviously lighting is a big one because it's indoor range and there's not very good lighting. Just cleaning the place up and adding the stairs outside has been a tremendous improvement. So we're just continuing that.
I would recommend if these go on an article, we will ask one of you to be available for an informational meeting about it. And I would recommend, just in the interest of bolstering your position, that knowing some of the detail about those grants would probably work in your favor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So Josh, you and I have talked a little bit because Josh has tried to hunt on our land. I have some experience with grant writing, so if you want to talk about that, I'm available as just as a citizen, not as a select board member.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Amazing. I welcome you all to come by at some point, or make arrangements to come by and tour the facility or make use of it. Definitely.
Yeah, sounds good.
A long time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again.
All right.
Have a good night.
Now, thank you. Have a good night. So now I will get back to what I was saying before, which is that Karen had suggested that we table the discussions about highway and general fund budgets for tonight. So that leaves us with the water and sewer and, sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Library.
And library. Yeah. And unless people have specific questions, I would entertain a motion to approve all three of those budgets. And even if we do want to have some discussion, unless there's anything glaring, I would entertain a motion to approve the library and sewer and water budgets.
I make a motion to approve the library, water, and sewer budgets.
I second the motion.
Okay, so that opens it for discussion. Karen, do you have any comments or suggestions related to those, or are you feeling pretty confident? I mean, they haven't really changed since the last time we looked at them, correct?
They have not changed. As far as the library goes, that accepting this one, it's in our budget anyway as an appropriation. So you don't necessarily need to approve it. You can accept it because the appropriation is within the general fund budget.
Okay.
And then,
So I guess I would suggest then a friendly amendment to the motion that we accept that we approve the water and sewer budgets and accept the presented library budget.
Do I need to restate that, Josh, or just say so moved?
Just say so moved.
So moved.
That,
Okay.
So seconded.
or accepted as a friendly amendment.
Accepted as a friendly amendment. Okay.
And
Got it.
seconded. Okay. Anything else, Karen?
no, sewer and water, they're dependent on user fees. So I'm comfortable with where we're at with that. The amount of user fees will cover the operating expenses.
And it was nice to hear from the auditor that even though we're a little lacking in the general fund realm, that all of the, well, we didn't talk specific, well, I guess the library falls under general fund, but that
Right.
sewer and water he felt were reasonably well apportioned as far as having funds. I think
Right.
we could bolster those just because of the nature of those systems, but
Right.
interesting to talk further with him about that.
Right. Yep.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Probably addressed to the town manager. The water and sewer budget, is there a budgeted surplus? And if so, how much?
There is, Mr. Fairman, and I don't have that information right in front of me. Hang on. See if I can quickly dig it out. I have lots of reports and they've been changing on the way, so.
Well, you're very good at this, so I know you'll find it.
Aren't you supposed to prompt Alyssa at this point?
No, I think I can handle this.
Is it a matter of
So for the water department, the fund balance in there right now is 1.276326.63. So $1,276,326.63. And let's see if I got the sewer. I have these all in sections.
And that's bonded for we bonded 1.5 on that. Is that right?
That
system.
It was probably more than that, David. I'd have to go back and look at long-term debt. But as far as the sewer, one at a time here. So the sewer right now is fund balance $856,564.12. So that one's a little lower.
Thank you, Ms. Town Manager. I'm assuming that some of those funds are restricted and some are not.
Yes, and because the reserve fund balance, Howard, for the sewer is $68,390.
So the rest of that number you told us is all surplus?
It's a fund balance in the sewer, as unrestricted funds.
Which for all practical purposes is the same as a surplus, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that carries year over year.
But that means there's
Correct.
different restrictions on it because it's a surplus.
May I make a comment? I can tell you why why there's excess in the sewer is because I pay 4 times a year, $164.54, 4 times a year, just for sewer, living alone.
That is the flat rate, Eva.
Yeah,
And
well, I mean, the flat
thank you
rate
for paying.
happened when we stopped sharing it with the whole community. And it used to, just like the roads, I pay for the roads way up in the pucker brush, and people come down street and pee, you know? So I think we need to go back to the day when we shared the sewer with everybody.
Your point is well taken. I'm not sure how we would explore that, but I think that can come back up as a discussion point. Not to disagree with you, Eva, in the point you're trying to make, but I would also state how remarkably expensive it is for all of those who are not living there to have private septic systems, which they are required to have. And you know, there's not a huge amount of upkeep on those, but it's $300 a year and to get pumped regularly if you're doing it properly. And if you have to replace the system, it's ballpark anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000. So when you look
No,
at
I understand that, but why would there be an excess if maybe a flat rate needs to be dropped?
well, the excess is because if anything goes wrong with the sewer system is that it's really expensive to repair. I mean, we had that, it wasn't that long ago that we had a freeze up on the line that went over.
I remember.
And that was over $100,000 just like that. So.
And like Ron was saying tonight, that money, having that money there is really good, really healthy, so we can continue to provide that service.
Yeah.
So.
At some point.
All right.
Yeah. The other thing too, the sewer was built in 1977, so that's an accumulation over that many years. So we're looking at everything, Eva, trust us.
No. I bought this house in '85. I had no idea it had us hooked up into the sewer. I was astounded. I didn't even know from such a thing. I never lived in any place where there was a sewer. So, I'll take a deep breath and I'll be willing to pay.
Part of our last meeting, we talked about, the maintenance of a system that old and having a plan and talking to the engineer that we work with so that money might be used in a way that we do maintenance so it saves us money in the long run. So it's really good to have that there. And
I understand. And it just went from no, in the, what was it I was paying? And then all of a sudden it doubled. How many years ago did it happen, Josh? How many years?
That just happened like 3 years ago because
and that was me living on Social Security doing an adjustment, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well,
but anyway, I'm up for paying. We don't want to stay here anymore tonight.
But a point that it does highlight, which might be worth considering, and I don't know how we would do this over time, but in the whole idea of making Putney a place that's affordable to live in, whether there are ways that, I'm speaking totally off the cuff here, so I don't want Mr. Fairman may quickly cite a statute that will rule out what I'm thinking, but there may be ways of us for having a sliding scale, for example, based on income based or something that would make it more affordable for people who were on a fixed income. So that's something.
Well, if it was on some kind of metering system, that would be different. I don't want to be on some sliding scale.
Right. We talked about that in a couple meetings back, Eva. And
listening. I was here and I was listening.
Yeah, when we have a free moment, we will get to that. And I have people that are willing to sit on a committee to reevaluate. So.
Yeah. I'm not asking for special dispensation here.
Oh, no,
I'm just
we're
bringing
not.
it up.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, we're not going to give it to you.
No.
Mr. Chairman.
But you can come use my bathroom.
And there might be some, Eva, that would ask for it and that really would need it in a way that it's definitely worth considering. So,
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Fairman.
I'm not going to cite a statute. I'm going to cite you for having suggested an excellent idea. And there actually is a precedent for it in the Homestead Education Property Tax Income Sensitivity Adjustment.
Yes, that's
because of how that works. Basically, it redistributes a certain amount of tax money to of everyone's tax money to aid people who have low incomes. And I'm not being an attorney here, but I'm just saying it could be certainly looked at as a possibility for a town like Putney. I don't know whether any other town has done it, but there would be nothing wrong with being first in the state to come up with something like that. That would be typically Putney to do.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Fairman, you're really good at research. If you have any time to see if there are any towns who've done that, that would be great.
Well, we'll see. I'm kind of trying to get out from under a bunch of projects right now, but you never know. Sometimes the answer is easy. It's I've never heard it spoken of, and on the other hand, what do I know? So I'll take a quick look and we'll see.
Thank you.
All right. So I can't remember, did we vote? No. We have not yet voted. It was moved and seconded to approve the water and sewer budget and accept the recommended library budget as part of the general fund. If there's no more discussion, then all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
That's it.
Okay.
Can I ask a
So
question?
we talked about that. Was there any more? Yeah, go ahead, David.
Did we finish talking about the articles?
Well, that's what I was just about to ask. Yeah.
Yes.
That was all you wanted to do under that line item, Karen?
Yeah, because they're going to change. So what I sent you, I've already eliminated with John's help, 1, 2, 3. So I think our town warning is going to be simple and it's going to be short.
So
if we do Australian ballot.
And we're going to add the school one.
Correct, and Larry will review the draft.
So Josh, procedural question.
Yeah.
We as a select board need to approve the warned articles by the 27th?
Yes.
Is that right?
7th, yes. Yeah.
So are we then waiting until the 27th to look at them all, or are we meeting again at a special meeting next week and we'll look at them then?
Yes.
I think Karen requested that we have a special meeting next week. So if everybody's okay with that, because she wanted to wait and look at if everybody's available, that would be great if we could do that, because we do need to do that. And Karen wants to finalize the highway and general fund budgets. And if we wait until the 27th to do all of that, and there's anything that needs to be talked about, it doesn't leave a lot of time.
So I just want to, for clarity, the special meeting will be, at least for now, to look at the general fund and highway fund preliminary budget discussion and to look at the warned articles. Is that right? Those three pieces?
Review the articles. Yes.
Okay.
That sounds correct to me. Karen, does that sound right to you?
That is absolutely correct.
And possibly an executive session if necessary.
Possibly, yes. Okay, so we're pretty much, I think your town manager's report has been largely embedded in what we've been talking about all night. So do you want to add anything here, Karen, or not?
No, I just want to remind people that the third property tax payment is due on February 19th. There's a sign out front. I'll post something on iPutney, but I think that's the only priority right now.
And just a reminder for people that might not know, there is now a secure box in front of Town Hall, which we are accepting tax payments in, Karen, is that correct?
That is correct, and people can still pay online with credit card, e-check, and something else, Alyssa. There's like
PayPal?
three, yeah, there's three
They can
different.
sign up for a direct debit.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I'd like to mention that adding Selectwoman McNeil to the Select Board, because there are now 3 members, has revolutionized your functioning. I've been watching this with such pleasure. And I would like to say to Selectwoman McNeil that although when you announced your candidacy, you said you wished to serve only until town meeting, should you wish to serve longer, I hope you will put your name on the ballot because you certainly have earned a position on our Select Board.
Thank you very much.
You're here.
Yes.
Yep.
And thank you for bringing that up, Howard. I agree. Any other business that we need to conduct? Farah, go ahead.
This is a request to Josh and Karen. I understand you may already be doing this, but I'm requesting that because I don't know how the agendas are set, but they tend to be very, very full. And I just wanted to request, if it's possible, if somebody comes and says, I have an agenda item, that we actually could say, okay, we will see you 2 meetings from now, rather than saying, of course, we have to see you on this meeting unless it's time sensitive.
Yeah, we do that. I mean, one of the problems, as you've noticed, is that our agendas have been regularly full. So pushing somebody off a couple weeks doesn't necessarily make it any better in the big picture. But I largely leave that to Karen because she's the one that has all the communication ability. And then what tends to happen is that we, somewhere in the range of 2 to 5 days before, we tend to have a discussion about what is on the agenda and what has to be. And sometimes we yank something and sometimes we don't. But it's just, right now we have a lot to do, and that's often the case, particularly in budget season. We tend to be really stacked. So. And
I understand that I'm in for the long haul. I just know that, or at least my sense is that people I know who have needed to get on the Brattleboro Select Board agenda don't always get on the day that they want to be seen. They sometimes have to wait.
Yeah.
There are people who wait here too, Bara.
Okay.
So when somebody requests through my office to be on the agenda, I have them request in writing. And then my first priority is town business. And then my second priority is to talk to the chair. And we go over the agenda. And then, if something can be put off, we definitely put it off.
Great.
So Josh is correct. I mean, this is a busy time and it's crunch time right now. And a lot of it is related to town meeting. And it will ease up. It will definitely ease up. But yeah.
Well, probably not as long as you're on the board, Bear.
This is not a personal thing. This is actually, I see how hard it is to fill this seat. And I'm glad that there are 2 people who are interested in being on the select board. But for me, my brain doesn't work after 2.5 hours. So it's challenging for me. I want to be present and I want to make good decisions for the residents of Putney. And it's challenging for me to do that. And I get that this is a different time. And so maybe this isn't an issue for outside budget season, but in case it is, I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, well, it certainly has for the last year, and it's been an oddball year. You know, historically, our meetings have been a little less full on average, but budget and town meeting season are crunch time, so that happens. But this last year has been very full for all sorts of reasons. But thank you for raising that, David.
In the last 2 years, or pretty much 2 years I've been here, I think there's been one meeting that was under an hour, and the rest were pretty long. And I think it is COVID. I think COVID has a lot to do with that, and the other issues that were up, you know, social issues that were happening too. But I had no idea it was this long when I came on. But I want to make a different comment about something else completely. I wanted to thank Karen and Alyssa again, and I was really glad to hear from Ron. I thought that what he had to share is really important, and I'm really glad to hear that we're having a plan, working towards having a plan, and getting more, heading towards more fiscal health. I don't know how else to say that, but thank you for everything you've done, both of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
definitely, very much appreciated.
A lot on right now. Every time I go in to see you, Karen, there's too much to do. So.
I know.
So,
I think when you came in last time, I said, "Not yet, David. I'm not done with her."
that's right. And I
I was like, "I'm not done."
I never go in to make her stop working. I just try to direct her to work on the things I'm interested in. So,
And it works.
I also just wanted to very briefly mention that David and Barra and I all participated last night in a social bias training session with Mary and Dottie, and I thought it was really good. I thought they did a really good job of facilitating, and that it's really important work, and I think they seem very well equipped to do that work with us. And so I just wanted to mention that, and that I appreciated that. Karen?
The town employees have also had one session. We have another session tomorrow from 9 to noon. And yeah, it was, for me, it was a good training. I mean, people were a little, reserved at the start of the meeting, but towards the end, everybody was opening up, and Dottie and Mary asked some really good questions. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow's to see, the next level and see what happens. So it was good training.
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Wasn't sure how it was going to go or how open I would be to it, but they created a really good environment, and I felt like I took a lot away from that meeting. I took a lot. So
good.
Yep.
Good. Barry, you want to add anything, or you're past your 2.5 hours? Zip it.
Just nod your head.
Yeah.
Well, we have to have an executive session to discuss still, so we're not done yet. We have to figure out the town report and the community service award piece, right?
Do you want to do that tonight, or do you want to do it tomorrow or next week?
I think
we have time.
I think we can do it next week. Yeah, that's fine. David?
I wanted to say something to Bear. I read it, and it was, I definitely have some comments, and I liked what you wrote, but I definitely have some comments. That's all. So we'll hold it till
do I have a copy yet or not?
Yes, you do, because I sent you and David the copy at the same time.
And when did that go out?
When did you send it to me, Bear? Last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say, Josh, it's really nice to not be the guy that doesn't have the paperwork in front of him. Time. It's really nice.
And that's what I like about Barra, because she always has them until tonight.
Alyssa, you got something?
Can I ask you a question, Josh?
Yes.
Do you have the select board report for the town report?
Not yet. I got time. Sure, I've got Karen's review of what I need
Highlights?
to include, but
Yeah, your highlights that you asked for?
I have my highlights, yes.
So
Mhm.
I just want to prepare us for next week's meeting, that the executive session is going to include the things we just discussed, and then also we need to discuss an employment issue.
Yes.
And can we set a time and date for the next meeting? Is it going to be 5:30 next Wednesday?
Do you want 5:30?
I'm happy to put it at 5 if you two are.
That's fine with me.
Karen, that okay with you?
Yes.
Alyssa? Okay, sounds good. So if there isn't any other business, then our next meeting will be next Wednesday, the 20th at 5 o'clock, right here, same channel, same group, everything else. And after that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.